What if Mace Windu uncovered Vader's secret identity? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. That breathing. He knew that breathing. Mace Windu pressed himself against the wall, heart pounding, as Darth Vader strode past his hiding place. The mechanical rhythm filled the corridor, in and out, like a death march counting down to doom. But something was wrong. Something familiar lurked beneath the monster's presence. Windu reached out with the Force. Just a whisper. Just enough to touch the edge of that vast darkness. And what he found changed everything. Beneath the armor, beneath the hatred, beneath the machine, keeping this creature alive. A Force signature he had known for over a decade. No, it couldn't be. Anakin Skywalker. The Chosen One hadn't died the night the temple burned. He had become this. The hero of the Clone Wars was now the Empire's most feared weapon. The boy who dreamed of freeing slaves now served the very monster who had enslaved the galaxy. Windu's mechanical hand trembled, his scarred face twisted with shock, then fury, then something far more dangerous. Purpose. For years, he had hidden in the depths of Coruscant, broken and forgotten. For years, he had believed Anakin dead, mourned him as another victim of Palpatine's purge. For years, he had wondered if things could have been different. Now he knew the truth. And the truth was a weapon. But how had it come to this? How had Mace Windu survived the fall that should have killed him? And what would he do with the terrible knowledge that the galaxy's greatest villain was hiding behind a mask? To understand what comes next, we must first understand how the Jedi Master survived the night everything ended. The story begins with a simple decision that shattered the galaxy. The Sith Lord lay before him, face twisted and scarred from his own deflected lightning, pleading for mercy with a voice that dripped with false weakness. Behind Windu, Anakin Skywalker watched with desperate eyes, begging him to show restraint, to follow the Jedi way, to give Palpatine a trial. But Windu had seen too much. He had felt the darkness coiling around Palpatine for years, a shadow so deep and so patient that it had fooled the entire Jedi Order. He had watched the Clone Wars tear the galaxy apart, while this creature manipulated both sides from the shadows. He had sensed the corruption spreading through the Senate, the military, even the Jedi themselves. And now, finally, he had the monster at his mercy. He's too dangerous to be left alive. The words left his lips with absolute conviction. His blade rose, ready to end the Sith threat forever. In that moment, Mace Windu was certain he was doing the right thing. The Jedi Code demanded mercy, demanded trials and due process, but the Code had failed them. It had allowed Palpatine to rise to power right under their noses. Sometimes, Windu believed, justice required harder choices. He never saw the betrayal coming. Anakin's lightsaber ignited with a snap hiss of blue energy. The blade swept through the air in a desperate arc, and Windu felt the searing pain explode through his wrist before his mind could even process what was happening. His hand, still clutching his lightsaber, tumbled away from his body. The purple blade deactivated as it fell, clattering against the floor of the Chancellor's office. Windu stumbled backward, shock overwhelming the agony for just a moment. He stared at Anakin, at the young man he had watched grow from a slave boy on Tatooine to one of the most powerful Jedi in the Order, the Chosen One. The prophecy made flesh. And now, standing there with his lightsaber raised and tears streaming down his face, the instrument of the Jedi's destruction. "What have you done?" The words came out as barely a whisper. Windu clutched his severed wrist, trying to stem the bleeding. trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. Behind Anakin, Palpatine rose from his position on the floor. The weakness vanished from his posture, like a mask being discarded. His yellow eyes blazed with triumph as he raised his gnarled hands. Power. Unlimited power. The lightning came not as a weapon, but as a hurricane. Blue-white energy erupted from Palpatine's fingertips with a ferocity that Windu had never experienced, not even moments ago when he had been deflecting the Sith Lord's attacks. This was different. This was Palpatine unleashed, no longer holding back, no longer pretending to be a feeble politician fighting for his life. This was the dark side in its purest, most devastating form. The force of the lightning lifted Windu off his feet and hurled him backward. He crashed through the massive window behind him, transparent steel shattering into 1,000 glittering shards around his body. For one eternal second, he hung suspended in the Coruscant night, surrounded by falling glass that caught the light of 1,000,000 city towers. Then, gravity claimed him. The fall seemed to last forever. Wind screamed past his ears as he plummeted through the urban canyons of Coruscant. Above him, the Senate District's gleaming towers stretched toward the sky, like fingers reaching for stars they would never touch. Below, the depths of the city-planet yawned like an abyss, layer upon layer of civilization, built on top of itself over thousands of years, until the lowest levels had become places where sunlight was merely a legend. Windu's training kicked in even through the shock and pain. He reached into the Force with everything he had left, desperately trying to slow his descent. It was like trying to catch himself with a fishing line while falling from orbit. The Force answered his call, but weakly, his concentration shattered by agony and blood loss. Still, it was enough. His fall began to slow, not enough to stop, but enough that he might survive the impact. He crashed through a landing platform several hundred levels below the Senate building. The Durasteel buckled under the force of his impact, and Windu felt bones break throughout his body. Ribs cracked. His remaining hand shattered against the metal. Something in his spine compressed in a way that sent lightning bolts of pain shooting through every nerve. He bounced once, twice, and then rolled to a stop against a support pillar. For a long moment, he simply lay there, staring up at the artificial lights that served as stars for those who lived in the middle levels. His breath came in wet, bubbling gasps. Blood pooled beneath him, warm and spreading. Every heartbeat sent fresh waves of agony through his broken body, and each one seemed weaker than the last. This is how I die, he thought. Betrayed by the Chosen One. Killed by a Sith Lord I should have destroyed years ago. What a fitting end for a Jedi Master who thought he knew better than everyone else. But Mace Windu had not survived decades of warfare, of battles against Sith and criminals and monsters across the galaxy, by giving up when things seemed hopeless. Even now, with his body broken and his blood draining away, something deep inside him refused to surrender. A spark of the same stubborn determination that had carried him from the streets of Harun Kal to the highest seat on the Jedi Council flickered in his chest. He would not die here. Not like this. Not while Palpatine still breathed and Skywalker stood at his side. With a groan that seemed to come from the depths of his soul, Windu rolled onto his stomach. The movement sent fresh spikes of pain through his shattered body, but he forced himself to keep moving. His one remaining hand clawed at the metal beneath him, dragging his broken form inch by agonizing inch toward the edge of the platform. Below, he could see another level, and another below that, and somewhere in those depths there would be someone who could help him. He fell again, this time only a single level, his force-enhanced body absorbing most of the impact. Then he crawled again. Then he fell again. Over and over, level after level, Mace Windu descended into the bowels of Coruscant, leaving a trail of blood behind him, like breadcrumbs marking his path to oblivion. He didn't know how long it took. Time lost all meaning in that endless descent, measured only in pain and determination, and the slowly fading light of consciousness. At some point, the artificial illumination changed from the clean white of the upper levels to the sickly yellow of the lower districts. The air grew thicker, heavier, carrying the scent of recycled atmosphere and industrial pollution. The sounds of a traffic faded, replaced by distant echoes and the drip of condensation from pipes that had been leaking for centuries. Finally, mercifully, Windu could go no further. He collapsed in what appeared to be an abandoned service corridor, surrounded by rusted machinery and forgotten cargo containers. His body had simply run out of strength, every reserve depleted, every well of determination finally dry. He lay there in the darkness, his breath growing shallower with each passing moment, and he prepared himself to become one with the Force. But the Force, it seemed, had other plans. The woman who found him was a Twi'lek smuggler named Koyi Voss. She had been using this corridor as a shortcut between her ship and a black market dealer who specialized in medical supplies, the kind of supplies that ask no questions about where they came from or who they were going to. When she stumbled across the broken body of a human male bleeding out on the floor, her first instinct was to keep walking. In the lower levels of Coruscant, getting involved in other people's problems was a good way to end up dead. But something made her stop. Maybe it was the way the dim light caught the remains of his robes, hinting at a significance she couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the stump of his wrist, cauterized in a way that spoke of lightsaber wounds and Jedi business. Or maybe it was simply that Koyi Voss, for all her years of smuggling and survival, had never quite managed to kill the part of herself that cared about other beings. She crouched beside him and pressed her fingers to his neck. The pulse, she found, was weak, thready, barely there at all. This man was dying. He might already be beyond saving, but he wasn't dead yet. And in the lower levels of Coruscant, that was something of a miracle. "Hold on," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "I know a droid who owes me a favor." The medical droid was an ancient 2-1B unit that had been operating in the lower levels since before the Clone Wars began. Its original owners were long dead. Its warranty expired centuries ago, and most of its replacement parts had been salvaged from other droids in similar states of decay. But it still knew how to heal, still possessed the programming and the knowledge to patch together broken bodies and send them back out into the world. When Koyi Voss brought the dying human to its cramped clinic, the droid took one look at him and calculated a survival probability of less than 3%. But 3% was not 0%, and the droid had brought patients back from worse odds before. It got to work. Windu drifted in and out of consciousness over the following weeks. Sometimes he was aware of pain, of the droid's manipulators working on his broken body, of Bacta patches being applied and removed and reapplied. Sometimes he was lost in dreams, dark visions of fire and screaming, and a galaxy falling into shadow. And sometimes, in his most lucid moments, he could feel the Force swirling around him, keeping him tethered to life when his body wanted nothing more than to let go. The droid rebuilt him piece by piece. His shattered bones were set and reinforced with metal pins. His damaged organs were repaired, or, where repair was impossible, replaced with synthetic alternatives. His severed wrist was fitted with a crude mechanical prosthetic, nothing like the elegant cybernetics available in the upper levels, but functional enough to grip and hold, and eventually fight. The burns from Palpatine's lightning were treated as best as possible, though the scars would never fully heal, leaving Windu's face a twisted map of purple-white tissue that made him nearly unrecognizable. When he finally regained full consciousness, nearly a month had passed since his fall. Koyi Voss was there when he woke, sitting in a chair beside his bed with a blaster on her hip and a wary expression on her face. "You're a Jedi," she said. It wasn't a question. Windu tried to speak, but his throat was too dry, too damaged. The droid whirred over and pressed a straw to his lips, letting him drink. The water tasted like rust and chemicals, but it was the most wonderful thing he had ever experienced. "I was a Jedi," he finally managed. His voice came out as a rasp, barely recognizable as his own. "What happened?" Koyi's expression shifted, a mix of sympathy and something darker. "The Empire happened. The Jedi are gone. The Chancellor, he's the Emperor now. They're saying the Jedi tried to assassinate him, tried to take over the Republic. They're hunting down anyone who survived." The words hit Windu like a physical blow. The Jedi are gone. He had known, somewhere in the depths of his unconscious mind, that something terrible had happened. But to hear it spoken aloud, to have it confirmed by this stranger who had no reason to lie, made it real in a way his fevered dreams had not. The temple burned. Koyi's voice was flat, matter-of-fact, the voice of someone who had learned to deliver bad news without letting it touch her. The clones turned on them, killed everyone they could find. Men, women, children. They say there's nothing left but ashes now. Windu closed his eyes. The faces of everyone he had known flashed through his mind. Kit Fisto, Aegon Kolar, Sayasi Tin, the 3 Jedi Masters who had accompanied him to arrest Palpatine, all of them cut down in seconds by the Sith Lord's blade. Ki Adimundi, Ayla Secura, Plo Koon. Friends and colleagues and students he had known for decades. All of them gone now, murdered by the soldiers they had trusted to fight beside them. And the younglings, the children who had been the Order's hope for the future, slaughtered in the very temple where they should have been safe. All of them dead, because he had failed, because he had underestimated Palpatine, because he had not trusted Anakin enough to bring him along for the arrest, and he had trusted him too much to suspect he might intervene. Skywalker. The name came out as a hiss, filled with more venom than Windu had thought himself capable of. In that moment, lying in a back-alley clinic with his body held together by rust and desperation, Mace Windu felt something he had spent his entire life learning to control. He felt hatred, pure, undiluted, burning hatred for the man who had betrayed everything the Jedi stood for. The Chosen One, Windu whispered. He was supposed to bring balance to the Force. Koyi shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know anything about that. But I know you need to heal, and you need to stay hidden. The Empire's got patrols everywhere, and they're paying good credits for information about surviving Jedi. If anyone finds out what you are, you're dead. And probably me too for helping you." Windu opened his eyes and looked at her. "Why did you help me?" The Twi'lek shrugged. "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe I thought having a Jedi owe me a favor might be worth something someday. Or maybe I just couldn't stand the thought of leaving someone to die alone in the dark. Thank you." The words felt inadequate, but they were all he had. "Whatever your reasons, you saved my life." I won't forget that. The months that followed were the darkest of Mace Windu's life. His body healed, slowly, imperfectly, but enough that he could eventually stand and walk and move without constant agony. His connection to the Force returned, weakened but present, a pale shadow of the power he had once commanded. But his spirit remained broken, shattered by guilt and grief and a rage that burned in his chest like a star going nova. He stayed in the lower levels, moving from one abandoned corner to another, always one step ahead of the Imperial patrols that occasionally ventured into the depths. Koyi Vos helped him at first, providing food and shelter and information about the world above. But eventually, she had to return to her own life, her own concerns, and Windu found himself alone in the darkness. The loneliness was almost unbearable. For his entire adult life, Windu had been surrounded by other Jedi. Even when he was physically alone, he could feel them in the Force. Thousands of bright presences scattered across the galaxy, all connected by their shared commitment to peace and justice. Now that connection was gone, severed like his hand had been severed, and in its place was only silence. Cold, empty, absolute silence. He tried to meditate, to find solace in the Force the way he had been taught since childhood. But the Force felt different now, darker, heavier, as if the destruction of the Jedi Order had wounded the very fabric of reality, leaving a scar that might never fully heal. When he reached out, searching for the familiar warmth of the light side, all he found was cold emptiness, punctuated by distant flickers of darkness that made his skin crawl. The nightmares were the worst part. Every time he closed his eyes, he was back in Palpatine's office. Every time he drifted off to sleep, he felt Anakin's lightsaber taking his hand. Every time exhaustion finally claimed him, he fell endlessly through the Coruscant night, watching the stars wheel overhead while the wind screamed past his ears. He would wake, gasping, drenched in sweat, his phantom hand aching with pain that his mind insisted was real, even though the limb no longer existed. During the days, if the endless artificial twilight of the lower levels could be called days, Windu explored his new domain. The depths of Coruscant were a world unto themselves, layer upon layer of civilization built on top of earlier civilizations, each one leaving its mark before being buried by what came after. The lowest levels, thousands of meters below the gleaming towers of the Senate District, were places where even the memories of sunlight had faded into legend. Here, in the perpetual gloom, entire societies had formed, communities of beings who had never seen the sky and never wanted to. They had their own languages, their own customs, their own ways of surviving in an environment that seemed designed to kill them. They hunted the strange creatures that had evolved in the darkness, creatures that had once been pets or pests on the surface, but had transformed over generations into something entirely different. They traded in salvage pulled from the ruins of older times, fragments of technology that the upper levels had discarded and forgotten. Windu moved among them like a ghost, learning their ways, adapting to their rhythms. His Jedi training served him well in some respects. He could go days without food when necessary, drawing sustenance from the Force. He could sense danger before it arrived, avoiding the predators, both human and otherwise, that prowled the lower levels. He could defend himself when avoidance wasn't possible, though he rarely needed to resort to violence. Most threats backed down when they sensed the power coiled inside him, waiting to be unleashed. But in other ways, his training failed him completely. The Jedi had taught him to be part of something larger than himself, to find meaning in service to the Order and the Republic. Now, the Order was gone. and the Republic had become an empire. Everything he had dedicated his life to building had been swept away in a single night, and he was left with nothing but memories and regrets. He began to understand why some Jedi who lost their connections went mad. The Order had been more than just an organization. It had been a family, a purpose, a reason for existing. Without it, the individual Jedi was just a being with unusual powers and no framework for using them. The temptation to simply give up, to surrender to despair or seek oblivion, was almost overwhelming. What saved him in the end was anger, not the explosive rage that the Jedi had always warned against. This was something colder, more controlled, a burning ember of fury that refused to be extinguished no matter how deep the darkness around him grew. Windu was angry at Palpatine for his deception, angry at Anakin for his betrayal, angry at the Council for their blindness, and angry at himself most of all for failing to prevent the catastrophe that had consumed everything he loved. That anger sustained him when nothing else could. It got him up in the mornings, such as they were. It drove him to keep moving, keep surviving, keep searching for some purpose that would justify his continued existence. The Jedi way was to release anger, to let it flow through and away like water off a stone. But Windu had begun to question the Jedi way. If their teachings had led to the Order's destruction, perhaps those teachings were wrong. He started practicing a different form of meditation. Instead of releasing his emotions, he channeled them. He took his anger and his grief and his guilt, and he shaped them into something useful, a fuel source that powered his connection to the Force. It was dangerous, he knew. The line between using dark emotions and being consumed by them was thin and treacherous. But Windu had always been confident in his self-control. If anyone could walk that line without falling, it was him. The first time he used this new approach in combat, he was defending a family of refugees from a gang of thugs who had decided to rob them. The thugs were experienced, armed with vibroblades and blaster pistols, and they outnumbered Windu 5-1. Under normal circumstances, he would have relied on Varpad, the form he had created, to channel their aggression back against them. But Varpad required an external source of darkness to redirect. Against ordinary criminals with no Force sensitivity, it was less effective. So instead, Windu drew on his own darkness. His rage at Palpatine became the strength behind his strikes. His grief for the fallen Jedi became the speed of his movements. His guilt over his failures became the precision of his attacks. The thugs never had a chance. When it was over, Windu stood among the bodies, his chest heaving, his mechanical hand still raised in a striking position. The refugee family stared at him with a mix of terror and awe, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. He had killed 5 armed men in less than 10 seconds, and he hadn't even needed to ignite his lightsaber. He should have felt horrified. The Jedi way taught that killing, even in defense of others, was a last resort that should always be mourned. But standing there in the aftermath, all Windu felt was satisfaction. These men had preyed on the helpless. They had caused suffering to those who couldn't defend themselves. And now they were gone, unable to hurt anyone ever again. Perhaps, he thought, this was what balance really meant. Not the absence of darkness, but the willingness to use it against those who deserved to feel its weight. The refugees thanked him profusely, offering to share what little they had. Windu declined, but he stayed long enough to point them towards safer territory, places where the gangs rarely ventured because the dangers there were too great even for them. Then he disappeared back into the shadows, already thinking about what he would do next. Word spread quickly through the lower levels. Someone new had arrived. Someone with powers the locals had never seen before. Some said he was a demon, risen from the depths to punish the wicked. Others claimed he was a former soldier, enhanced with experimental technology that gave him superhuman abilities. A few, those old enough to remember the Clone Wars, whispered that he might be a Jedi, one of the mystical warriors who had once served the Republic before their betrayal and destruction. Windu did nothing to correct any of these theories. Let them believe what they wanted. The mystery only added to his effectiveness. Criminals who might have challenged an ordinary man thought twice about confronting someone whose nature and capabilities were unknown. Over the months that followed, he carved out a territory of his own. Not officially, of course. The lower levels didn't have formal governments or recognized borders, but everyone knew that certain areas were safer than others, and Windu's patrol routes became the safest of all. The predators learned to avoid his territory, and the prey learned to seek its shelter. He established contacts among the various communities that scraped out their existence in the depths. A Rhodian merchant who traded in salvaged technology, a Twi'lek healer who operated a clinic for those who couldn't afford or couldn't risk the medical facilities of the upper levels, a group of former Republic soldiers who had deserted rather than serve the Empire and now protected a small settlement of other deserters and their families. None of them knew exactly who he was. He was careful to keep his identity hidden, never revealing his face or his past. But they trusted him, as much as anyone in the lower levels trusted anyone. He had proven himself through his actions, protecting them when they needed protection, asking nothing in return. It wasn't the life he had imagined for himself. Once, he had sat on the Jedi Council, advising chancellors and shaping the destiny of the galaxy. Now he was a vigilante in the sewers, fighting petty criminals and wondering if anyone even remembered his name. But it was a purpose, and purpose was what kept the darkness at bay. He also began to gather information about the world above. The lower levels weren't completely cut off from the rest of Coruscant. People came and went, goods and information flowed between the depths and the surface, and someone patient enough to listen could learn a great deal about what was happening in the Empire. What he learned disgusted him. Palpatine had consolidated power with terrifying efficiency. The Senate still existed, but only as a rubber stamp for the Emperor's decrees. The military had been reorganized and expanded, its ranks filled with conscripts and volunteers who believed the lies about Jedi treachery. And everywhere, a cult of personality had grown up around the Emperor himself, portraying him as the wise and benevolent leader who had saved civilization from the chaos of the Clone Wars. The lies were everywhere, and most people seemed eager to believe them. It was easier, Windu supposed, to accept the official story than to confront the truth. If the Jedi had really been heroes, if the Republic had really been worth saving, then the galaxy had suffered an unimaginable tragedy. But if the Jedi were traitors and the Republic was corrupt, then the Empire was simply the next step in a natural progression. People preferred the narrative that didn't require them to grieve. He also heard about Darth Vader. The stories were fragmentary at first, scraps of rumor that filtered down through the layers of Coruscant. A monster in black armor, an enforcer who answered only to the Emperor, a hunter of Jedi who had never failed to find his prey. The descriptions varied wildly, some claiming Vader was a droid, others insisting he was an alien of unknown species, still others suggesting he was something ancient and inhuman, that Palpatine had awakened from some dark corner of the galaxy. Windu paid attention to these stories, but he didn't connect them to Anakin Skywalker. How could he? The Anakin he remembered was a young man, handsome and vital and very much human. The creature called Vader was described as more machine than man, a walking death machine encased in armor and sustained by technology. They couldn't be the same person. It wasn't possible, or so he told himself. The truth is that some part of Windu suspected from the very beginning. There were details in the stories that should have made him wonder. Vader's fighting style, described by the few who had seen it and survived, sounded familiar. His obsession with hunting down Jedi survivors suggested a personal vendetta rather than mere obedience to orders. And the timing of his appearance, emerging from nowhere immediately after the Empire's founding, was too convenient to be coincidental. But Windu wasn't ready to face that possibility. Not yet. Accepting that Anakin had become Vader would mean accepting that the Chosen One, the prophecy that had defined Jedi thinking for generations, had produced a monster instead of a savior. It would mean that everything Qui-Gon Jinn had believed, everything the Council had debated and eventually accepted, had been catastrophically wrong. So Windu pushed the suspicion aside and focused on what was in front of him: the criminals of the lower levels, the refugees who needed protection, the small war he was fighting in the shadows while the galaxy burned above him. Years passed. Windu lost count of exactly how many. Time moved differently in the lower levels, marked not by calendars or clocks, but by the rhythms of survival. He ate when he found food. He slept when exhaustion demanded it. He fought when threats appeared and rested when they didn't. His body adapted to this life in ways that surprised him. The injuries he had suffered in his fall never fully healed, but they stopped mattering as much. His mechanical hand became as natural as the one he had been born with, perhaps more so, given how often he had to use it. The scars on his face, the twisted remnants of Palpatine's lightning, no longer drew his attention when he caught his reflection in still water or polished metal. He was becoming something new, not a Jedi, not anymore. The Order was dead, and he had no desire to resurrect it. But not a Sith either, despite the darkness he had learned to embrace. Something in between, something the galaxy had never seen before. And then, one night, everything changed. He was tracking a group of slavers who had been operating in his territory, snatching refugees and selling them to off-world buyers. Windu had been gathering intelligence on their operation for weeks, identifying their leaders, mapping their routes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Tonight was supposed to be that moment. He had followed them to an exchange point in the middle levels, where they were meeting with a buyer to deliver their latest cargo. But as he positioned himself for the attack, he felt something that stopped him cold. A presence in the Force, dark and vast and terrifyingly powerful, descending through the levels of Coruscant like a storm rolling in from the horizon. Darth Vader. Windu pressed himself into the shadows, cloaking his presence with every technique he had learned. His heart pounded in his chest, a rhythm of fear and anticipation that he hadn't felt in years. The slavers below him had noticed something too. Their casual conversation died away, replaced by nervous glances and hands reaching for weapons. Then the darkness arrived. A shuttle descended through an access shaft that connected the middle levels to the surface. It was an imperial design, sleek and angular, and painted the black of deep space. As it touched down on a platform adjacent to the exchange point, the slavers scattered like insects exposed to sudden light. They didn't get far. The shuttle's ramp lowered, and Vader emerged into the artificial twilight. He was even more terrifying than the stories had suggested. The black armor seemed to absorb the dim light around it, creating a void where a man should be. The cape swept behind him like the shadow of some enormous predator, and the mask, that expressionless death's head, reflected nothing at all. But it was the breathing that truly unsettled Windu. That mechanical rhythm, in and out, steady and inexorable as the ticking of a clock counting down to doom. It echoed through the chamber like the pulse of some cosmic horror, a sound that would haunt his nightmares for years to come. Vader didn't hurry. He didn't need to. The slavers were trapped, caught between his position and the sealed doors that had somehow locked behind them. They had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. And as they realized this, their panic gave way to desperation. They opened fire. Blaster bolts screamed through the air, converging on Vader from half a dozen directions. Any normal being would have been torn apart in the crossfire. But Vader was not a normal being. He raised one hand, and the bolts simply stopped, hanging in the air like insects trapped in amber. Then, with a casual gesture, he sent them flying back toward their sources. The slavers died screaming, all except one. The leader, a scarred Weequay named Cross, had been smart enough to hold his fire. He stood now with his hands raised, trembling visibly, as Vader approached him. The Emperor requires information. Vader's voice was a deep rumble, filtered through the mask into something barely human. You will provide it. What followed was the most disturbing thing Windu had ever witnessed. Vader reached out with the Force and simply tore the information from Cross's mind. The Weequay screamed, his face contorting in agony as his memories and thoughts were violated. His deepest secrets, his most shameful acts, his every hidden fear, all of it ripped from his consciousness and examined by the monster before him. When it was over, Cross collapsed to the ground, his mind broken beyond repair. Vader turned away without a second glance. He has no information about the one I seek. The words were directed at the stormtroopers who had emerged from the shuttle. Kill him and dispose of the bodies. The stormtroopers moved to obey. Windu watched from his hiding place, fighting the urge to intervene. He wanted to help Cross, wanted to save him from the execution that was coming. But revealing himself to Vader would be suicide. And Cross, for all that he was a victim in this moment, had spent years trafficking in the suffering of others. His fate, while horrific, was not undeserved. So Windu watched. And he waited. And as he did, he felt something tugging at the edge of his awareness. There was something familiar about Vader. Something in the way he moved, the set of his shoulders, the aggressive tilt of his helmeted head. Windu had seen those mannerisms before, in a different context, worn by a different face. But where? When? Then Vader ignited his lightsaber. The blade was crimson, the color of blood and rage. It cast harsh shadows across the chamber, illuminating Vader's mask in demonic red light. And as Vader moved to demonstrate some point to his troops, executing a series of practice strikes that ended in a decapitation of the already dead Cross, Windu felt his stomach drop. He knew that form. Form 5, Gem So, the Way of the Krayt Dragon. He had watched it performed thousands of times in the Jedi Temple by students and knights and masters who had dedicated their lives to its mastery. But this particular variation, this specific flourish at the end of each strike, this precise angle of the blade during recovery, he had only ever seen from one person. Anakin Skywalker. No. The word escaped Windu's lips before he could stop it, barely more than a whisper. But in the silence of the chamber, it might as well have been a shout. Vader's head turned toward his hiding place. For one eternal moment, they stared at each other through the darkness. Windu, crouched in the shadows with his heart pounding and his mind reeling. Vader, motionless and silent, that mechanical breathing the only sound in the sudden stillness. Then Vader turned away. "There is nothing here. Continue the search in the lower sectors. I will rejoin you shortly." The stormtroopers departed, and Vader followed them back to his shuttle. Within minutes, they were gone, ascending through the access shaft toward whatever dark mission awaited them above. Windu remained in his hiding place for a long time afterward. His body trembled with reaction, adrenaline and shock combining into a cocktail that left him barely able to move. His mind raced through the implications of what he had discovered, each realization worse than the last. Anakin was alive. The boy he had trained, the man he had fought beside, the chosen one who had betrayed everything the Jedi stood for, had survived the fall of the Republic. But he hadn't just survived. He had been transformed into something monstrous, a creature of metal and hatred that served Palpatine's darkest purposes. The chosen one had become the Empire's executioner. And suddenly, everything made sense. Vader's obsessive hunting of Jedi survivors wasn't just duty, it was personal. He was eliminating everyone who might recognize him, everyone who might expose the truth about what he had become. The armor, the mask, the mechanical breathing, all of it was designed not just to keep him alive, but to hide his identity, to sever any connection between Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine had planned this from the beginning. Windu saw it clearly now. The Sith Lord hadn't just corrupted Anakin. He had remade him, transformed him into a weapon that could never be traced back to its origins. The galaxy mourned the hero with no fear, as a fallen champion, never suspecting that he still walked among them as their oppressor. The truth burned in Windu's chest, like a star going nova. He wanted to scream it from the rooftops, to broadcast it across every channel, to force the galaxy to see what Palpatine had done. But who would believe him? A broken old man hiding in the sewers, claiming that the Empire's most feared enforcer was actually a former Jedi hero. He would be dismissed as a madman or a rebel propagandist. No, exposing the truth would require more than just his word. It would require evidence, proof that even the Empire's propaganda machine couldn't explain away. And gathering that proof would require getting close to Vader again, observing him, documenting his mannerisms and fighting style and force signature in ways that could be verified by others. It would be the most dangerous thing Windu had ever attempted. But it was also, he realized, the most important. Because the truth about Vader wasn't just a weapon against the Empire. It was a wound that might never heal if left to fester in darkness. The galaxy deserved to know what their hero had become. And Mace Windu was going to show them. Sometimes, in his weakest moments, Windu considered ending it. What was the point of survival when everything he had dedicated his life to was gone? The Jedi Order was destroyed. The Republic had become an empire, and he was just a broken old man hiding in the sewers of a planet that had never cared about the people who lived in its shadows. Death would be a release from the pain, from the guilt, from the endless replaying of that moment when he should have been faster, should have sensed Anakin's intentions, should have done something different. But every time he contemplated that final surrender, something held him back. A stubborn refusal to let Palpatine win. A burning need to make Skywalker pay for what he had done. Or perhaps simply the Force itself, whispering to him that his story was not yet over. that there was still some purpose left for him to fulfill. Whatever the reason, Windu survived. And in surviving, he slowly began to change. The Jedi way was one of peace and compassion, of serving the light and trusting in the wisdom of the Force. But the Jedi way had failed. It had allowed the Sith to rise to power, had blinded the Order to the corruption festering in its midst, had produced a chosen one who became the instrument of their destruction. Windu could no longer believe in a philosophy that had proven so catastrophically inadequate. Instead, he began to forge his own path. Not the way of the Sith, with its worship of power and its embrace of cruelty, but not the old Jedi way either, with its rigid rules and its fear of emotion. Something in between, something harder, something that acknowledged the darkness in the galaxy and was willing to meet it with equal force. The first time he killed someone after his fall, it was almost an accident. He had been scavenging for food in an abandoned warehouse when he stumbled across a group of slavers preparing to transport their cargo. A dozen terrified beings from half a dozen species, all of them bound and gagged and waiting to be sold to whoever would pay the highest price. The slavers spotted him, and one of them raised a blaster. And before Windu even consciously decided to act, the Force had surged through him and crushed the man's throat. The other slavers died in the next few seconds, their weapons useless against a former Jedi Master who had spent decades perfecting the art of combat. When it was over, Windu stood among the bodies, breathing hard, his mechanical hand still raised in the gesture that had snapped the last slaver's neck. The captives stared at him with a mix of terror and hope, unable to understand what had just happened. He freed them, showed them a path to the refugee centers that Koyi had told him about, places where displaced beings could find food and shelter, and maybe, eventually, a way off Coruscant. Then he disappeared back into the shadows, his mind churning with what he had done. He had killed before, of course. The Clone Wars had required it. Battle after battle, where Jedi lightsabers had cut down droids and sometimes the organic beings controlling them. But that had always been in service of the Republic, sanctioned by the Council, justified by the necessities of war. This was different. This was personal. This was Mace Windu, alone in the darkness, dealing death to those who preyed upon the helpless. And he found, to his surprise, that he didn't feel guilty about it at all. More followed. Word spread through the lower levels of Coruscant that something was hunting the predators who had always operated with impunity in the depths. Slavers disappeared. Spice dealers were found with their own product forced down their throats. Gang leaders who had ruled their territories through fear and violence woke to find themselves paralyzed and surrounded by the people they had terrorized, left to face whatever justice their victims chose to deliver. The people began to call him the Ghost. They whispered about him in the makeshift markets and the refugee camps, in the cantinas that served watered-down drinks, and the clinics that treated injuries no questions asked. Some said he was a demon, risen from the depths of Coruscant itself to punish the wicked. Others said he was an angel, sent by whatever gods they believed in to protect those who had no other protection. Most didn't know what to believe, only that the lower levels had become slightly safer, slightly more bearable, and that someone out there was fighting for them when no one else would. Windu let them believe whatever they wanted. He didn't do this for recognition or praise. He did it because it was the only thing that made him feel alive anymore, the only thing that quieted the rage burning in his chest. Every slaver he killed was Palpatine in his mind. Every gang leader was Anakin. Every predator who fell before him was another small payment on the debt that the galaxy owed to everyone the Empire had destroyed. Years passed. Windu lost count of exactly how many. Time moved differently in the lower levels, where there was no sunrise or sunset to mark the days, only the endless cycle of artificial lights flickering on and off, according to schedules set centuries ago and long since forgotten. His body adapted to the darkness, his eyes learning to see in conditions that would have left him blind before. His mechanical hand was replaced several times as the crude prosthetics wore out, each replacement a little better than the last, as he learned to maintain and modify the technology himself. He heard rumors from the world above, scraps of information that filtered down through the layers of Coruscant, like sediment settling in murky water. The Empire was consolidating its power, crushing any hint of resistance with overwhelming force. The Emperor ruled absolutely, his will enforced by legions of stormtroopers and, according to the whispers, by a terrifying figure in black armor who answered only to Palpatine himself. Darth Vader. The name meant nothing to Windu at first. Just another Sith, another monster serving the Emperor's dark designs. He assumed Vader was some ancient evil that Palpatine had awakened, or perhaps a new apprentice trained in secret to replace the one who must have died in the Clone Wars. He certainly never connected the name to Anakin Skywalker. How could he? The Anakin he remembered was a young man, arrogant and emotional, but still recognizably human. The creature called Vader was described as more machine than man, a walking nightmare encased in black armor, who left death in his wake wherever he went. But the galaxy was vast, and Windu had learned to focus on what was in front of him, rather than dwelling on what he could not change. Let Palpatine and his monster rule the stars. Down here, in the forgotten depths of Coruscant, Mace Windu had found his own small war to fight. That changed on a night that seemed like any other. Windu was stalking a group of Imperial collaborators who had been kidnapping refugees and selling them to off-world buyers. He had been tracking them for days, learning their patterns, identifying their leaders, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They operated out of an abandoned factory in one of the middle levels, close enough to the upper districts to have access to legitimate shipping, but deep enough to avoid serious Imperial scrutiny. He was positioned on a catwalk above their main warehouse, watching through the shadows as they prepared another shipment, when he felt something that made his blood run cold. A presence in the Force. Not just any presence. A darkness so deep and so vast that it seemed to swallow the very light around it. A power that eclipsed anything Windu had felt since the night Palpatine's lightning had sent him tumbling into the abyss. It was approaching the warehouse, and it was approaching fast. Windu pressed himself against the wall, cloaking his own presence with techniques he had perfected over years of hiding. Below, the collaborators had noticed something too. Their casual conversation died away, replaced by nervous glances and hands reaching for weapons. The warehouse doors creaked open, and the darkness walked in. Darth Vader. He was even more terrifying in person than the rumors suggested. The black armor gleamed under the warehouse lights, angular and menacing, designed to inspire fear in everyone who saw it. The cape swept behind him like the wing of some enormous predator. And the mask, that expressionless death's head of a mask, reflected no light at all, giving the impression of a void where a face should be. But it was the sound that truly unsettled Windu, that mechanical breathing, steady and rhythmic and utterly inhuman. In and out, like the pulse of some terrible machine given form and purpose. The collaborators fell over themselves trying to bow and scrape before the Emperor's enforcer. Their leader, a heavyset human named Grex, stepped forward with his hands raised in supplication. "Lord Vader, we weren't expecting you. Is there a problem with our arrangements?" Vader didn't respond immediately. He stood in the center of the warehouse, that masked head turning slowly as if scanning the room. Windu pressed himself even further into the shadows, convinced that the Sith Lord would somehow see through his concealment and expose him. But Vader's gaze passed over his position without pausing. "The Emperor requires information. There are reports of a Force-sensitive operating in the lower levels, someone interfering with Imperial business." Grex's face went pale. "The ghost?" "I've heard stories, my lord, but I thought they were just superstition. The Empire does not deal in superstition." Vader's voice was deep and resonant, filtered through his mask into something that barely sounded human. "If there is a Jedi hiding in the depths of Coruscant, I will find them. You will tell me everything you know." What followed was an interrogation that made Windu's stomach turn. Vader didn't need to torture the collaborators physically. He simply reached into their minds with the Force, tearing through their thoughts like paper, extracting every scrap of information they possessed about the so-called ghost. Grex screamed as his memories were violated, as his deepest fears and most shameful secrets were laid bare before the Sith Lord's pitiless gaze. When it was over, Vader stepped back from the sobbing wreck of a man. He turned to the stormtroopers who had entered behind him. "Execute them. They have outlived their usefulness." The blaster fire was almost merciful after what the collaborators had endured. Windu watched it all from his hiding place, his heart pounding, his mind racing. Vader was hunting him. The Emperor's own enforcer had been sent to find the ghost and destroy him. He should flee. Leave Coruscant, find some backwater world where no one would ever think to look for him, spend the rest of his days in hiding. But as Vader turned to leave the warehouse, something happened that changed everything. The Sith Lord paused at the entrance. One of his subordinates approached with a datapad, and Vader glanced at it briefly before issuing orders. The movement was casual, routine, the kind of gesture that any military commander might make 1,000 times a day. But something about the way Vader held himself, the set of his shoulders beneath that heavy armor, the slight forward lean of his posture as he studied the information. Windu knew that stance. He had seen it countless times in the Jedi Temple, in council meetings, on battlefields across the galaxy. That was the posture of a man barely containing his aggressive energy, always ready to spring into action, always looking for the next fight. That was how Anakin Skywalker had always stood. The realization hit Windu like a thunderbolt. He reached out with the Force, just the barest whisper of awareness, touching the edge of that vast darkness to feel the truth for himself. And beneath the corruption, beneath the hatred and the pain and the mechanical systems keeping the body alive, he found what he was looking for. A Force signature he had known for over a decade, changed beyond recognition, twisted almost past the point of identification, but unmistakably, impossibly, the same. Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker. The Chosen One had not died the night the temple burned. He had been transformed into this monster in a mask, this weapon of the Emperor. Everything Anakin had been, his power, his skill, his potential for greatness, had been perverted into an instrument of terror and oppression. The boy who had been destined to bring balance to the Force now served the darkness that had consumed the galaxy. Windu remained frozen in his hiding place long after Vader had departed. His mind reeled with the implications of what he had discovered. All these years, he had thought of Vader as just another Sith, another evil to be dealt with someday, when he had regained his strength. But this changed everything. This was personal. The memories came flooding back, unbidden and unwelcome. Anakin as a child, standing before the council with those bright, hopeful eyes, already more powerful in the Force than most Jedi would ever become. Anakin as a Padawan, reckless and headstrong but undeniably gifted, always pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable. Anakin as a knight, the hero with no fear, winning impossible victories in the Clone Wars, while the Council whispered about his emotional instability and his attachment to Senator Amidala. The Council had feared him from the beginning. Windu saw that clearly now, with the bitter clarity of hindsight. They had sensed the darkness lurking in Anakin's heart, the potential for destruction that matched his potential for greatness. But instead of addressing that darkness, instead of helping him understand and overcome it, they had kept him at arm's length. They had denied him the rank of master while demanding he spy on his closest friend. They had preached detachment while offering nothing to fill the void. And Palpatine had been there all along. The kindly Chancellor with his open door and his understanding ear, always ready to listen when the Jedi wouldn't. Always ready to validate Anakin's frustrations. Always ready to plant another seed of doubt in fertile soil. We failed him. The thought came unbidden, and Windu tried to push it away. Skywalker made his choices. He betrayed everything the Jedi stood for. He murdered younglings, children who had done nothing wrong except trust the Order to protect them. Whatever sympathy Windu might feel for the circumstances that led to his fall, it could not excuse what he had become. But the guilt remained, gnawing at him in the darkness. Could things have been different? If the Council had trusted Anakin more, involved him in the decision to arrest Palpatine, would he still have turned? If Windu himself had been less rigid, less certain of his own judgment, could he have seen the signs of Palpatine's manipulation before it was too late? The questions had no answers. The past could not be changed. All that remained was the present and the choice that now lay before him. Windu could continue as he had been, hiding in the shadows, fighting his small war against the predators of the lower levels. He could spend the rest of his days pretending that Darth Vader was someone else's problem, that the Empire's enforcer had nothing to do with the broken Jedi Master rotting in the depths of Coruscant. He could live with the knowledge and do nothing, or he could act. The question was how. Vader was powerful, perhaps more powerful than Windu had ever been even before his injuries. A direct confrontation would likely end in his death. And even if he somehow managed to kill Vader, what would that accomplish? The Empire would continue. Palpatine would simply find another enforcer, another weapon to wield against anyone who opposed him. No, killing Vader wasn't enough. The galaxy needed to know the truth. They needed to understand that the monster terrorizing them was the same man they had once cheered as a hero. They needed to see how completely Palpatine had corrupted everything the Republic once stood for. The truth was the weapon. And Windu was going to find a way to use it. Over the following weeks, Windu began to change his approach. Instead of hunting criminals and protecting refugees, he focused all his attention on observing Darth Vader. He tracked the Sith Lord's movements across Coruscant, noting his patterns, studying his methods, learning everything he could about the creature his former student had become. It was dangerous work. Vader's sensitivity to the Force meant that Windu had to maintain constant vigilance, cloaking his presence whenever the Dark Lord was near. Several times, He was certain Vader had detected something. That masked head turning toward his position with an intensity that suggested more than casual awareness. But each time, Windu managed to slip away before discovery, melting back into the shadows that had become his home. What he learned confirmed his worst fears about Anakin's fall. Vader was everything that Anakin had been, but twisted beyond recognition. The aggressive combat style remained, but stripped of any restraint or mercy. The tactical genius was intact, but directed entirely toward destruction and terror. The emotional intensity that had always defined Anakin was still there, visible in the way Vader dealt with failure or perceived disrespect, but it had curdled into something dark and poisonous. But there were other things too, things that suggested Anakin Skywalker had not been entirely consumed by Darth Vader. Windu noticed how Vader sometimes paused when passing younglings in the upper levels, that masked head turning to watch them for just a moment before moving on. He saw how Vader's subordinates occasionally received mercy when they expected execution, spared for no apparent reason, except perhaps that something in their situation had triggered a memory. He observed how Vader conducted private investigations that had nothing to do with his official duties, searching for information about specific individuals from his past. Most significantly, he discovered that Vader was obsessed with finding someone named Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin's former master, apparently still lived somewhere in the galaxy. And Vader was determined to hunt him down, interrogating anyone who might have information, pursuing the faintest leads with a single-minded intensity that bordered on madness. There was still attachment in him, still the capacity for connection that the Jedi had always warned against. Somewhere inside that armor, trapped beneath the darkness and the pain, Anakin Skywalker still existed. Windu wasn't sure what to do with that knowledge. Part of him wanted to believe it meant redemption was possible, that the Chosen One might somehow be brought back to the light. But another part, the part that remembered the screams of dying younglings and the heat of Palpatine's lightning, rejected that hope as foolish sentimentality. Anakin had made his choice. He had to live with the consequences, or die with them. The opportunity to act came sooner than Windu expected. He had established contact with elements of the nascent rebellion through his network of informants in the lower levels. The resistance movement was still in its infancy, scattered cells of idealists and malcontents who lacked the resources or organization to seriously threaten the Empire. But they had passion, and they had reach, and they had access to communication networks that could spread information across dozens of systems. More importantly, they had Bail Organa. The senator from Alderaan was one of the few surviving members of the Old Republic who openly opposed the Empire. He walked a dangerous line, using his political position to shelter refugees and coordinate resistance efforts, while maintaining just enough plausible deniability to avoid imperial retribution. When word reached him that someone in the depths of Coruscant claimed to have information about Darth Vader's true identity, he agreed to a meeting. They met on a smuggler's station in the Outer Rim, both of them traveling under false identities and elaborate precautions. Organa arrived first, accompanied by 2 bodyguards who scanned the room with professional paranoia. When Windu entered, wrapped in a hooded cloak that hid his scarred features, the senator's hand drifted toward his concealed blaster. The station was called Haven's Rest, a misleading name for a facility that offered neither haven nor rest to most of its inhabitants. It hung in the void between systems, a converted cargo hauler that had been expanded over decades into a sprawling complex of docking bays, cantinas, and rental habitats. The Haiur clientele was the usual Outer Rim mix, Smugglers, mercenaries, refugees, and criminals of every stripe, all of them drawn by the station's reputation for anonymity and its convenient lack of imperial presence. Windu had chosen this location precisely because it was the kind of place where unusual meetings could happen without attracting attention. Two humans sitting in a corner booth, speaking in low voices over drinks they barely touched, was the most common sight in any of Haven's Rest's dozen cantinas. The bodyguards were more conspicuous, but even that wasn't unusual. Many of the station's clients had reason to fear for their safety. "I was told you have information," Organa said carefully. "Information worth the risk of this meeting." Windu studied the senator for a moment before responding. Bail Organa had aged considerably since they last met, which had been years before the fall of the Republic. His hair was graying at the temples, and deep lines had carved themselves into his face, the marks of someone who had spent too many years living with fear and stress. But his eyes were still sharp, still filled with the intelligence and integrity that had made him one of the few politicians Windu had ever respected. The senator was dressed simply, in the kind of nondescript clothing that any middle-class traveler might wear. No signs of his wealth or position, nothing that might identify him as one of the most important figures in the nascent rebellion. He had learned the art of invisibility over years of walking the tightrope between public service and secret resistance. Windu lowered his hood. The reaction was everything he had expected. Organa's face cycled through confusion, recognition, disbelief, hope, and finally, something that looked almost like religious awe. His hand dropped away from his blaster. His bodyguards tensed, sensing his surprise, but he waved them back with a subtle gesture. "Master Windu." The words came out as barely more than a whisper. "The galaxy believes you're dead." "The galaxy believes many things that aren't true, Senator. That's why I'm here." For a long moment, Organa simply stared at him. Windu could almost see the calculations running behind those intelligent eyes. The implications of this survival, the opportunities it presented, the risks it entailed. The senator had been playing political chess for decades, and his mind automatically assessed every new piece that appeared on the board. Finally, Organa gestured to the booth across from him. "We have much to discuss, but first, I need to understand. How?" The temple fell. The clones hunted down every survivor they could find. We searched for years, hoping to find anyone who had escaped, and found almost no one. How did you survive? Windu settled into the booth, accepting a drink from the server droid that appeared at their table. He took a small sip, more for the ritual than the refreshment, and then began to speak. He told Organa everything. The EU, confrontation with Palpatine, Anakin's betrayal, the lightning and the fall, his recovery in the lower levels of Coruscant, the years of hiding and vigilante work, and finally, his discovery of Vader's true identity. The telling took over an hour. Windu held nothing back, understanding that Organa needed the full picture to make informed decisions about what came next. He described his observations of Vader in clinical detail, the patterns he had noticed, the evidence he had gathered, the conclusions he had drawn. Throughout the recitation, Organa listened in silence. His expression grew more troubled with each revelation, but he didn't interrupt. He was too experienced a politician to let emotion interfere with the gathering of information. Only when Windu finished did he finally speak. "Are you certain about Vader's identity? There can be no room for doubt if we're going to act on this. None. I knew Skywalker for over a decade. I've observed Vader extensively over the past year. The Force signature is the same, just corrupted beyond recognition. The fighting style is identical. The psychological patterns match perfectly. Beneath that mask is the man who cut off my hand and stood by while Palpatine nearly killed me. Organa was quiet for a long moment, processing this confirmation. He had known Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars, had worked alongside him in the Senate, and collaborated on military operations. They had been friends, or at least allies, united by their shared commitment to the Republic and its ideals. Learning that his friend had become Darth Vader was clearly shaking him to his core. "I remember when he used to visit Alderaan," Organa said finally. His voice was distant, lost in memory. He was always so earnest, so passionate about doing the right thing. Even when we disagreed about methods, I never doubted his intentions. How could someone like that become this? Palpatine. Windu's voice was flat. He was manipulating Anakin from the day they met. Every kindness, every bit of praise, every private conversation, it was all designed to create this outcome. Palpatine didn't just corrupt Anakin, he engineered the corruption step by step over more than a decade. "The Emperor is even more dangerous than I thought," Organa murmured. To be capable of something like this, to have the patience and the vision to execute it so perfectly. He's a monster, but he's not invincible. And the truth about Vader is a weapon that can be used against him. Organa's eyes sharpened, his mind shifting from processing to planning. "What exactly are you proposing?" Over the next several hours, they hammered out the details of the operation. Windu shared the evidence he had gathered: recordings, testimonies, analysis of fighting styles and Force signatures. Organa explained the rebellion's communications capabilities, the networks that could distribute information across hundreds of systems, the slicers who could breach Imperial security, ensure maximum exposure. The plan that emerged was ambitious, but feasible. They would prepare a comprehensive broadcast that laid out the truth about Vader's identity. Not just claims, but proof. Side-by-side comparisons of Vader's movements with archival footage of Anakin Skywalker, testimonies from Clone War veterans who had served under both, technical analysis of lightsaber forms that only experts could replicate, and Windu's own account of his survival and investigation. The broadcast would be sent through every channel the rebellion could access: hyperspace comm relays, local holonet nodes, even physical data chips distributed through smuggling networks. They would make it impossible for the Empire to suppress, ensure that the truth reached every corner of the galaxy. But first, Windu insisted, he needed to confront Vader directly. Not just to confirm his identity beyond any possible doubt, but to give Vader a chance to respond, to see if anything remained of Anakin Skywalker that might be reached. Organa was skeptical of this last goal. "You think he can be redeemed? After everything he's done?" "I don't know." Windu's honesty was brutal. The Jedi always taught that anyone could be redeemed, no matter how far they'd fallen. But I'm no longer sure I believe that. What I do know is that Vader is unstable. There's conflict inside him, guilt and grief that he tries to suppress. Exposing the truth might make that conflict worse. It might drive him deeper into darkness, or it might create an opening for something else. And if it drives him deeper into darkness, you'll have created an even more dangerous enemy. Maybe. But an enemy who knows he's been exposed, who knows the galaxy sees him clearly, is different from an enemy hiding behind a mask. Even if Vader becomes more brutal, he'll also be more predictable. And the psychological damage of being known, really known, might undermine his effectiveness in ways that direct opposition never could. Organa considered this for a long moment. The senator was not a warrior. His battles were fought with words and politics rather than weapons. But he understood strategy, understood how to leverage information against opponents who relied on secrecy. "All right," he said finally. "We'll proceed with your plan. But I want contingencies in place. If something goes wrong during your confrontation with Vader, the broadcast needs to go out anyway. And if you die, the rebellion needs to continue without you." Agreed. Windu had already accepted the possibility of his death. "I've prepared detailed recordings of everything I know. Even if I don't survive, the truth will be spoken." They spent more hours working out the details. Communication protocols, timing sequences, backup plans for every contingency they could imagine. By the time they finished, the station's artificial day had cycled twice, and both men were exhausted. But they had a plan, and for the first time since the fall of the Republic, Windu felt genuine hope that things might change. Before they parted, Organa gripped his hand firmly. "I've lost too many good people to this war," the senator said. "Please don't add yourself to that list." "I don't intend to die, Senator. Not until Palpatine and Skywalker have paid for what they've done. After that, well, we'll see." They went their separate ways. Organa back to Alderaan and his careful dance of public compliance and secret resistance. Windu back to Coruscant and the confrontation that would determine the fate of his mission. The months of preparation that followed were some of the most intense of Windu's life. He had always been disciplined, even by Jedi standards, but now he pushed himself to limits he hadn't known he possessed. Every aspect of the coming confrontation was planned, analyzed, and rehearsed. Every contingency was prepared for. Every advantage was sought and exploited. He trained his body relentlessly, pushing through the pain of old injuries to regain as much of his former combat prowess as possible. He practiced lightsaber forms in the darkness of abandoned corridors, visualizing opponents who weren't there, preparing himself for the reality of facing one who was. He meditated for hours at a time, strengthening his connection to the Force, building reserves of energy he would need when the moment came. He also continued his surveillance of Vader, refining his understanding of the Dark Lord's capabilities and vulnerabilities. He noted patterns in Vader's behavior that suggested periodic fluctuations in his physical condition, probably related to maintenance cycles for his armor. He identified locations where Vader seemed more comfortable, more in control, and locations where he showed signs of stress or discomfort. He mapped the layout of the ruined temple sections, memorizing every corridor and chamber that might serve as a battlefield. And he prepared his evidence, making sure that the broadcast would be devastating, regardless of what happened during the confrontation. Recordings were edited and verified. Testimonies were collected and authenticated. Technical analyses were reviewed by experts who could vouch for their accuracy. Every piece of the puzzle was put in place, waiting only for the trigger that would release it to the galaxy. Finally, the day came. Everything was ready. The broadcast was queued and waiting. The rebel networks were primed to receive and distribute it. All that remained was the confrontation itself. Windu made his way through the ruins of the Jedi Temple one last time, moving through passages he had walked for decades, past chambers where he had trained and taught and served. The ghosts of his brothers and sisters seemed to walk beside him, their presence in the Force a comfort rather than a reproach. He reached the meditation chamber and settled into position. The Force swirled around him, light and dark, mixing in patterns he had learned to recognize over years of practice. He was as ready as he would ever be. Then he reached out with the Force and sent his beacon into the darkness. Come and face me, Skywalker. Come and see what your choices have wrought. And in the depths of the Imperial Palace, Darth Vader felt the summons and began to move. I was told you have information, Organa said carefully. Information worth the risk of this meeting. Windu lowered his hood. Organa's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally something that looked almost like hope. He had aged since they last met, his hair graying and his face lined with the stress of living in constant danger. But his eyes were still sharp, still filled with the intelligence and integrity that had made him one of the few politicians Windu had ever respected. Master Windu. The galaxy believes you're dead. The galaxy believes many things that aren't true, Senator. That's why I'm here. They talked for hours. Windu told him everything, from his survival and the years of hiding in the lower levels to his discovery of Vader's true identity. Organa listened in stunned silence, his expression growing more troubled with each revelation. He had known Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars, had considered him a friend and ally in the fight against the Separatists. Learning that his friend had become the Emperor's monster clearly shook him to his core. Are you certain? Organa asked when Windu finished. There can be no doubt. None. I knew Skywalker for years. I've observed Vader extensively. The Force signature is the same, just corrupted beyond recognition. Beneath that mask is the man who cut off my hand and stood by while Palpatine nearly killed me. This changes everything. Organa began to pace, his mind clearly racing through the implications. Or it changes nothing. The Empire controls the narrative. They could simply deny it, call it rebel propaganda, and most people would believe them. Then we need to make the truth undeniable. We need evidence that even Imperial propaganda can't explain away. What kind of evidence? Recordings, testimonies, anything that connects Vader to Skywalker in a way the public can understand. There are clone veterans who served with Anakin for years. Some of them must have noticed the resemblance, even if they were conditioned not to question it. There are Force signatures recorded in Jedi archives that might have survived the Purge. And there's me. You. I'm a Jedi Master who knew Skywalker intimately. I've observed Vader firsthand. I can testify to the truth in a way that carries weight. My survival alone will be a blow to Imperial credibility. Combined with the revelation about Vader, it could shake the foundation of everything they've built. Organa stopped pacing. His expression was troubled, but beneath the concern, Windu could see the strategist calculating possibilities. It's risky. If we move too soon, if the evidence isn't overwhelming, the Empire will spin it against us. They'll say we're desperate, making up lies to undermine their legitimacy. I know. That's why I need time. Time to gather more evidence, time to prepare the broadcast, and time to confront Vader himself. Confront him? Windu, that's suicide. Maybe. Windu's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. But Skywalker needs to know that his secret has been discovered. He needs to face what he's become. And I need to see for myself whether any part of the man I knew still exists inside that armor. Organa studied him for a long moment. You're not just doing this for the rebellion, are you? This is personal. It's been personal since the night he cut off my hand and helped destroy everything I dedicated my life to building. I'm not asking for your blessing, Senator. I'm asking for your help. When the time comes, I need the rebellion to be ready to spread the truth across the galaxy. Can you do that? The senator was quiet for several seconds. Then he nodded slowly. "We'll be ready. But Windu, be careful. If you die before we can broadcast, this was all for nothing. And I've lost too many good people to lose you, too." "I don't intend to die, Senator. Not until Palpatine and Skywalker have paid for what they've done. After that, well, we'll see." They parted ways with a handshake and a mutual understanding of the risks ahead. Windu returned to Coruscant with a new sense of purpose burning in his chest. The time for hiding was almost over. The time for truth was approaching. But first, he needed to confront the monster that his former student had become. The preparations took months. Windu scouted dozens of potential locations for the confrontation, eventually settling on the ruins of the old Jedi Temple. The Empire had converted the upper levels into Palpatine's private citadel, a monument to his triumph over the Order he had destroyed. But the lower sections remained sealed off, too damaged or too haunted for even Imperial engineers to reclaim. Those passages held memories that Windu knew would affect Vader deeply. Memories of training and friendship, and a life that had been destroyed. Before he could plan the confrontation, however, Windu needed to understand his enemy more completely. The glimpse he had caught in the middle levels had revealed Vader's identity, but it hadn't given him the comprehensive knowledge he would need to survive a direct encounter. So he began the most dangerous surveillance operation of his life. For weeks, Windu tracked Vader across Coruscant. He followed at a distance, using every technique of concealment the Jedi had ever developed, watching as the Dark Lord carried out his duties for the Empire. He observed Vader's command style, his interactions with subordinates, his methods of interrogation and execution. He catalogued patterns of movement, periods of vulnerability, habits that might be exploited. What he learned painted a picture of a being caught between two worlds. Vader was doomed, brutally efficient in his official duties. He commanded Imperial forces with the same tactical brilliance that had made Anakin Skywalker famous during the Clone Wars. His strategic decisions were sound, his resource management excellent, his ability to inspire fear in his troops matched only by his ability to inspire obedience. By any objective measure, he was one of the most effective military commanders the Empire possessed. But beneath that efficiency, Windu detected chaos. Vader's mood swung wildly between cold calculation and explosive rage. He would spend days in perfect control, executing his responsibilities with mechanical precision, then suddenly lash out at some perceived slight, killing subordinates who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place at the wrong moment. His behavior was unpredictable in ways that his official reputation didn't capture. The armor was part of the problem. Windu hadn't initially understood how extensive Vader's injuries must have been, but the more he observed, the clearer it became. The suit wasn't just protective gear or a symbol of authority. It was a mobile life support system, constantly monitoring vital signs, adjusting medication levels, managing pain that must have been constant and overwhelming. Vader couldn't eat normally, couldn't breathe normally, couldn't feel the wind on his face or the warmth of sunlight. He was a prisoner in his own body, trapped in a shell that kept him alive, while denying him everything that made life worth living. The chronic pain explained some of the volatility. Imagine spending every moment of every day in agony, Windu thought, with no hope of relief except death. Imagine knowing that the one who put you in this condition was the same one who demanded your service, who praised your loyalty while deliberately keeping you weak enough to control. The psychological damage must be immense. But the armor wasn't the only source of Vader's instability. There was also his past, Windu noticed how Vader reacted when certain topics arose in his presence. References to the Clone Wars produced subtle shifts in his posture, tensions in his shoulders that the armor couldn't entirely hide. Mentions of Jedi, even in the context of hunting survivors, seemed to cause him physical discomfort. And any reminder of Padme Amidala, however indirect, hit him like a punch to the gut. The love that had driven Anakin to the dark side was still there, twisted into something unrecognizable perhaps, but present. Vader hadn't stopped caring about the woman he had lost. He had simply buried that caring beneath layers of anger and denial, transforming love into obsession and grief into rage. Windu also observed Vader's relationship with Palpatine, though only from a distance. The Emperor rarely left his palace, and Vader's visits to his master were conducted in private. But the aftermath of those visits was telling. Vader always emerged diminished somehow, his presence in the Force dampened, his movements carrying an edge of pain that wasn't entirely physical. Whatever happened in those meetings, it wasn't pleasant for the apprentice. The dynamic was clear enough, even without direct observation. Palpatine controlled Vader through a combination of physical dependence, psychological manipulation, and raw power. The suit that kept Vader alive was designed by Imperial engineers, answering to the Emperor. It could be sabotaged, turned off, modified in ways that would increase suffering without reducing effectiveness. Vader knew this. He was utterly dependent on the mercy of a man who had none. And yet there were signs that this control was not absolute. Vader occasionally made decisions that served his own interests, rather than the Empire's. He diverted resources to personal investigations. He showed mercy to individuals who should have been executed. He took risks that a purely loyal servant would have avoided. Most significantly, he was hiding things from his master. The visits to places from his past, the emotional episodes that he concealed from official reports, the moments of hesitation before carrying out particularly heinous orders, all of it suggested a divided loyalty that Palpatine might not fully appreciate. This was valuable intelligence. If Vader could be reached, if some spark of Anakin Skywalker could be fanned back to life, it might be possible to turn the Emperor's weapon against him. The odds were long, but they existed. Windu also gathered more concrete evidence for his planned broadcast. He obtained recordings of Vader in combat, using holocams that were concealed throughout the lower levels. He documented the specific techniques and flourishes that marked Vader's fighting style as identical to Anakin Skywalker's. He collected testimonies from beings who had encountered both men, carefully edited to protect their identities while establishing the connection. The evidence accumulated slowly, piece by piece, until Windu had assembled a case that even Imperial propaganda would struggle to dismiss. It wouldn't convince everyone, nothing could convince everyone, but it would plant seeds of doubt that would grow over time. All of this preparation took nearly a year of patient surveillance, careful evidence gathering, and strategic planning. A year of avoiding detection while moving through the same spaces as the galaxy's most feared hunter. A year of confronting his own fears about what would happen when he finally faced the monster his former student had become. During that time, Windu also made contact with the broader rebellion. His network in the lower levels had always included individuals with connections to resistance movements. And now, he began to cultivate those connections more deliberately. He met with rebel agents who were willing to listen to his story. He shared intelligence about Imperial operations that his surveillance had uncovered. He established himself as a valuable asset whose loyalty to the cause was beyond question. The meeting with Bail Organa was the culmination of these efforts. The senator had been skeptical at first, unwilling to believe that a Jedi Master had survived the Purge and spent years hiding in the depths of Coruscant. But Windu's knowledge, his presence in the Force, and the evidence he had gathered eventually convinced him. Their alliance was formed in that neutral moon's shadows, two men who had lost almost everything, united by a common enemy and a shared vision of the future. They would expose Vader's identity to the galaxy. They would shatter the lie that protected Palpatine's most valuable weapon. And they would use the truth as a rallying cry for everyone who still believed that the Empire could be defeated. But first, Windu had to confront Vader directly. Not to kill him, though he wouldn't hesitate if that became necessary, but to confirm his identity beyond any possible doubt, to look into that mask and see for himself what Anakin Skywalker had become. He spent weeks exploring the ruins, mapping routes, and identifying strategic positions. The temple's layout was burned into his memory from decades of residence. But much had changed since the night it fell. Walls had collapsed, corridors had been blocked by debris, and everywhere, the scorch marks of lightsaber battles and the rust-brown stains of old blood served as reminders of what had been lost. The meditation chamber he chose for the confrontation had special significance. This was where he had trained countless Padawans in the mysteries of the Force, including sessions with young Anakin Skywalker when Obi-Wan was occupied with other duties. The walls bore the marks of practice duels and Force exercises, though those marks were now overlaid with the scars of real combat from the night everything ended. Windu spent a night in that chamber before the confrontation, sitting in the darkness, reaching out with the Force to touch the memories embedded in the walls. He felt echoes of laughter and frustration, of triumph and failure, of all the students who had struggled and grown within this space. And beneath those echoes, he felt the terror of their final moments, the betrayal and confusion and pain of beings who had trusted the Republic to protect them. "This is why I'm doing this," he reminded himself. "Not for revenge, not for vindication, but because the truth deserves to be known, and the dead deserve to be remembered." When the preparations were complete, Windu reached out through the Force. Not a message exactly, not a direct communication, but a presence, a beacon in the darkness, something that Vader would feel and recognize, something that would draw him to this place for a confrontation that had been years in the making. The beacon was subtle, but unmistakable. It carried the flavor of Windu's Force signature, the unique combination of strength and discipline that had made him one of the most powerful masters of his generation. Anyone sensitive to the Force would feel it. Vader, with his own tremendous power and his personal connection to Windu's history, would feel it as a challenge. "Come and face me, Skywalker. Come and see what your choices have wrought." Then he waited. The hours passed slowly. Windu meditated, gathering his strength, preparing himself for a battle that would test everything he had learned in a lifetime of combat. He reviewed his strategy, the psychological weapons he would deploy, the truths he would speak to, try to shake Vader's composure. He accepted the possibility of his own death, releasing his attachment to survival while committing fully to the goals that justified the risk. And finally, he felt it. A darkness approaching through the ruins, vast and cold and terribly familiar. The beacon had worked. Vader was coming. Windu opened his eyes and ignited his lightsaber. The purple blade hummed in the darkness, casting strange shadows on the scarred walls. He took a deep breath and released his fear into the Force. This was the moment. Everything he had survived, everything he had learned, everything he had planned, all of it came down to the next few hours. Either he would achieve his goals and change the course of galactic history, or he would die in the ruins of everything he had once loved. Either way, the truth would finally be spoken. Vader came alone. He spent weeks exploring the ruins, mapping routes and identifying strategic positions. The temple's layout was burned into his memory from decades of residence, but much had changed since the night it fell. Walls had collapsed, corridors had been blocked by debris, and everywhere, the scorch marks of lightsaber battles and the rust-brown stains of old blood served as reminders of what had been lost. He found the meditation chamber, where he had trained countless Padawans in the arts of the Force. The walls were scorched, the floor cracked, but the room itself was recognizable. This would be the place. This would be where Mace Windu faced Darth Vader and spoke the truth that neither of them could escape. When the preparations were complete, Windu reached out through the Force. Not a message exactly, not a direct communication, but a presence, a beacon in the darkness, something that Vader would feel and recognize, something that would draw him to this place for a confrontation that had been years in the making. Then he waited. Vader came alone. Windu felt him approaching, long before he heard the mechanical breathing echoing through the ruined corridors. That vast darkness in the Force, that cold weight of hatred and pain, announced his presence like a thunderstorm rolling across the horizon. The temperature in the meditation chamber seemed to drop as Vader drew near, the very air growing thick with menace. The door creaked open, and Darth Vader stepped into the room. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply stood there, separated by the width of the chamber, two men who had once been something like allies, now facing each other as enemies. The red glow of Vader's lightsaber illuminated his masked face, throwing strange shadows across those angular features. Windu's purple blade answered, casting the chamber in a shifting mix of crimson and violet light. I felt a presence I had not sensed in years. Vader's voice was even deeper than Windu remembered, filtered through the mask into something barely human. I wondered if my memory deceived me. Your memory is intact, Skywalker. Windu kept his voice steady, though his heart was pounding. It's your conscience that's failed you. Vader went absolutely still. That name no longer has any meaning for me, doesn't it? Windu began to circle slowly, keeping his blade between them. I've watched you for months. I've seen how you move, how you fight, how you react to things that remind you of your past. That's not the behavior of someone who's truly let go of who they were. That's a man in denial, pretending the monster he's become has nothing to do with the boy who once dreamed of freeing slaves. The mechanical breathing quickened slightly, the only tell of the emotion roiling beneath that mask. You know nothing of what I am. I know exactly what you are. Windu's voice sharpened. You're what happens when potential is wasted and trust is betrayed. You're the chosen one who chose wrong. You're Anakin Skywalker wrapped in metal and hatred, serving the same monster who manipulated you into destroying everything you once loved. Silence. The word exploded from Vader with a force that made the walls tremble. He attacked without warning, his crimson blade sweeping through the air in a devastating arc that would have bisected Windu if he hadn't already been moving. The Jedi Master met the strike with his own blade, the impact sending shockwaves through his arms and into his shoulders. Their lightsabers locked, humming with deadly energy. Through the chaos of battle, Windu looked into that expressionless mask and tried to see the man beneath. The Force swirled around them both, light and dark mixing in patterns that would have fascinated any observer sensitive enough to perceive them. Windu's purple blade represented his unique position in the cosmic balance. A Jedi who had learned to touch the darkness without being consumed by it. Vader's crimson blade represented the corruption of everything Anakin had once been. Potential twisted into destruction. Power divorced from purpose. Between them, where their weapons met, the energy was something else entirely. Neither light nor dark, but raw, primal. The Force in its most fundamental state before consciousness divided it into categories. This was what it meant to face someone of equal power, Windu realized. This was what it meant to fight for stakes that transcended personal survival. The Council made mistakes, he said through gritted teeth, his arms straining against Vader's mechanical strength. We all made mistakes, but you made a choice, Anakin. You chose to save Palpatine when you should have let him die. You chose to cut off my hand when I was trying to end the Sith threat forever. You chose to murder children who trusted you to protect them. Each accusation was designed to wound. Windu knew Vader's psychology intimately, had studied it for months, and he knew exactly which truths would cut deepest. The mention of Palpatine would remind Vader of his manipulation. The mention of the hand would echo Vader's own injuries. And the mention of the younglings, the children who had been slaughtered in the temple, would strike at whatever remained of Anakin's conscience. The effect was immediate. Vader's breathing became irregular, the mechanical rhythm disrupted by something that might have been emotion. His attacks became more aggressive, but less precise, power-overwhelming technique. He was fighting angry now, and angry opponents made mistakes. Windu pressed his advantage. He shifted his grip on his lightsaber and launched a series of attacks designed to exploit Vader's new vulnerability. His blade wove patterns in the air, each one forcing Vader to adjust his defense, each adjustment creating tiny openings that a master could exploit. You don't know what you're talking about, Vader snarled, blocking a thrust that would have taken his arm. You weren't there. You didn't see what I saw, feel what I felt. I felt the temple burn. Windu's voice was cold. I felt thousands of my brothers and sisters die. I felt their confusion when the clones turned on them, their fear when they realized what was happening, their final moments of agony as they were cut down. He scored a hit across Vader's chest plate, leaving a smoking furrow in the armor. The blow wasn't deep enough to cause real damage, but it demonstrated that Vader's defense was not impenetrable. And I felt you, Windu continued. In the middle of all that death, I felt your presence, your rage, your triumph. You enjoyed it, didn't you? You enjoyed killing them. I did what was necessary. Vader's counterattack was devastating. He unleashed a telekinetic barrage that sent debris flying through the chamber, forcing Windu to divide his attention between blocking the physical attacks and defending against Vader's lightsaber. The combination overwhelmed his defenses, and a glancing blow from a chunk of masonry sent him stumbling. Vader pressed forward, his blade carving furrows in the floor where Windu had stood moments before. The Jedi Master retreated, using the terrain to create space, leaping over obstacles and sliding around pillars that Vader simply cut through. Their battle took them out of the meditation chamber and into the corridors beyond. They fought through passage after passage, lightsabers casting dancing shadows on walls that hadn't seen light in years. The ruins of the temple echoed with the sounds of combat, the hum of energy blades, the crash of debris, the mechanical rhythm of Vader's breathing. Windu named the dead as they passed. This corridor is where Shakti made her last stand. She held off a platoon of clones for nearly an hour before they overwhelmed her. That chamber is where Jocasta Nu tried to protect the archives. She destroyed centuries of knowledge rather than let it fall into Imperial hands, then died defending the ashes. "Stop," Vader said, but the word came out uncertain, almost pleading. This was the room of 1,000 fountains. Windu gestured at a space that was now dry and dead. The fountains long since drained, the plants withered to brown husks. "Master Yoda used to meditate here. Do you remember? You came here sometimes, didn't you? After your nightmares about your mother. You said the sound of the water helped you sleep." The revelation stopped Vader in his tracks. His lightsaber hung motionless at his side, the red glow dimming slightly as his concentration wavered. "How do you know that?" "Because I watched over you," Windu said quietly. "All of us did, even when you thought we didn't care. We knew you were struggling. We knew the darkness was calling to you. We just didn't know what to do about it." The confession hung in the air between them. It was perhaps the most honest thing Windu had ever said about the Council's handling of Anakin Skywalker. They had known he was at risk. They had sensed the shadows growing in his heart. But they had been too bound by tradition, too afraid of innovation, to try anything that might have made a difference. "You could have helped me," Vader said. His voice was raw, stripped of its usual mechanical coldness. "You could have taught me how to control it. Instead, you just kept telling me to let go, to release my emotions, as if it were that simple. I know." Windu lowered his lightsaber slightly, a gesture of openness that he knew was dangerous. "I know we failed you. The Order failed you. I failed you personally, but that doesn't excuse what you became. What I became was your fault." Vader raised his blade again, but the attack didn't come. "Every lesson you taught, every judgment you passed, every time you looked at me like I was a threat instead of a person, all of it pushed me toward Palpatine. He was the only one who ever accepted me for what I was. He accepted you as a tool." Windu's voice was sharp. He saw your power and your vulnerability, and he spent 13 years shaping you into exactly what he needed. Everything he ever said to you, every kindness he ever showed, was calculated to bring you to that moment in his office. Do you think it was coincidence that he waited until you were most desperate, most afraid, most willing to do anything to save the people you loved? He engineered every detail. The truth of this was evident in Vader's reaction. His shoulders slumped slightly, his head bowed, his mechanical breathing becoming shallow and rapid. He had heard this before, perhaps, had thought it himself in the darkest hours of his imprisoned existence. But hearing it spoken aloud by someone who had witnessed Palpatine's manipulation firsthand gave it a weight that internal doubt could never match. He promised he could save Padme. Vader's voice was barely above a whisper. He said the dark side held powers that the Jedi were too afraid to explore. He said I could learn to prevent death itself. And when did he teach you these powers? The question was devastating, because Windu already knew the answer. Palpatine had never taught Vader anything about preventing death. The promise had been a lie, bait to secure Anakin's cooperation in the destruction of the Jedi. Once that destruction was complete, once Anakin had fallen too far to turn back, the promise had been quietly forgotten. He never taught me. Vader's voice cracked. He said the training would begin after the Jedi were eliminated, after we had secured the galaxy. There was always another task that had to come first, another enemy that had to be destroyed, another threat that demanded my attention. And then Then Padme died anyway. Yes. The word came out as a scream, and with it came an explosion of force energy that sent Windu flying across the room. He crashed into a pillar and felt something crack in his chest, but he forced himself to his feet before Vader could follow up the attack. The Dark Lord stood in the center of the corridor, surrounded by floating debris, his lightsaber raised but not striking. His whole body was trembling, the armor itself seeming to vibrate with barely contained emotion. Whatever walls he had built around his memories of Padme, whatever defenses he had constructed to keep his grief at bay, Windu had broken through them. "She died because of me," Vader said. "I was supposed to save her. I did everything he asked. I killed everyone he pointed at. I gave up everything I believed in. And she still died. Because of me. Because I choked her in my rage when she came to bring me back to the light." The admission was the most honest thing Vader had said in years, perhaps in his entire existence as Vader. He had never told anyone the truth about Padme's death, had never acknowledged his own role in the tragedy. But here, in the ruins of the temple where he had once trained, facing a man who had known him when he was still capable of goodness, the truth came pouring out. Windu felt something shift in the Force, a crack in the darkness that surrounded Vader, a fissure through which something lighter might eventually emerge. He hadn't expected this. He had come here expecting to fight, to expose, perhaps to die. He hadn't expected to find himself in the presence of genuine grief and remorse. "Anakin," he said, and for the first time since their battle began, his voice carried something like compassion. "What you did was monstrous. The younglings, the temple, everything that followed. There may be no forgiveness for those crimes, but as long as you're alive, as long as you're capable of feeling what you're feeling right now, you're not beyond all hope." Hope. Vader laughed, and the sound was horrible, mechanical and human, mixed together into something that wasn't quite either. "What hope is there for someone like me? I can't survive without this armor. I can't leave Palpatine without dying. I can't undo a single thing I've done. There is no hope. There is only the next task, and the one after that, and the one after that, until finally something manages to kill me." "Then let me offer you something else," Windu said. "Not hope for yourself, but hope for what comes after. The truth about who you are is going to be broadcast across the galaxy. Everyone will know that Darth Vader was once Anakin Skywalker. Everyone will see how completely Palpatine corrupted you. And maybe, just maybe, seeing your example will warn others away from the path you took." Vader was silent for a long moment. The debris floating around him slowly settled to the floor as his emotional storm subsided. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer, more controlled, though still carrying undertones of the pain he had just revealed. "You think exposing me will change anything? The Empire will deny it. The Emperor will spin new lies. And I will continue to do what I have always done, because there is nothing else for me to do." "Maybe," Windu admitted, "but the truth has power that lies don't have. It might not change anything immediately, but over time, year after year, it will wear away at the foundation of everything Palpatine has built. And someday, when the Empire finally falls, they will remember how it started. They will remember that the Chosen One was corrupted, that the hero became a monster, that the Republic was betrayed from within. That memory will protect them from making the same mistakes again. Or it will teach them that heroes are just monsters waiting to happen. Perhaps." Windu's voice was steady. "That's a risk I'm willing to take. The truth is worth speaking, even when it's dangerous, even when it hurts. That's something the Jedi taught me, even if we didn't always live up to it. The two of them stood there in the darkness, facing each other across the ruins of everything they had both lost. Windu felt the weight of the moment, the significance of this confrontation, not just for them personally, but for the galaxy as a whole. This was history being made. This was the truth being spoken to power in a way that might never happen again. Then Vader raised his lightsaber. "I should kill you," he said. "Every instinct I have says to end this before your broadcast can spread. But instead, I'm going to let you go." Windu blinked in surprise. He had been prepared for many outcomes, but this wasn't one of them. "Why?" "Because you've given me something I haven't felt in years." Vader's voice was almost gentle. "Clarity. I know what I am now. I know what I did and why I did it. I know that Palpatine used me and continues to use me. None of that changes what I have to do. But at least now I'm doing it with my eyes open. That's not good enough. No, it isn't. But it's all I can offer. Now go, before I change my mind." Windu hesitated. The opportunity to strike was there. Vader had lowered his guard, physically and emotionally. A quick thrust could end the threat forever. But something held him back. Perhaps it was the possibility of redemption that their conversation had revealed. Perhaps it was simply exhaustion from their battle. Or perhaps it was the Force itself, whispering that this was not the right moment, that there was more story left to tell. He deactivated his lightsaber and backed away slowly, keeping his eyes on Vader until he reached the corridor that would lead him out of the temple. The Dark Lord watched him go but made no move to follow. "This isn't over," Windu said from the threshold. "No, it isn't. But for now, we're done. Go spread your truth, Jedi. We'll see what comes of it." Windu turned and disappeared into the shadows. His body ached with the injuries he had sustained, and his mind spun with the implications of everything that had happened. But he was alive. And the broadcast was still going out. Whatever else the confrontation had achieved, it had not prevented his primary mission. Behind him, in the darkness of the ruined temple, Darth Vader stood alone. For the first time in years, he was facing the truth of what he had become. It hurt worse than his physical injuries, worse than the constant agony of his armor, worse than anything he had experienced since the day Padme died in his arms. But it was real. And in the empire of lies that Palpatine had built, reality was the most dangerous thing of all. "The Council made mistakes," he said through gritted teeth. "We all made mistakes. But you made a choice, Anakin. You chose to save Palpatine when you should have let him die. You chose to cut off my hand when I was trying to end the Sith threat forever. You chose to murder children who trusted you to protect them." Vader shoved him back and pressed the attack. His blade moved with terrifying speed and power, each strike carrying the weight of the mechanical limbs and the dark side energy fueling them. Form 5 Gem. So the same aggressive style Anakin had always favored, but enhanced by the cybernetics that made Vader's body a weapon in itself. Windu retreated, his Varpad technique allowing him to redirect some of Vader's darkness back against him. But the sheer power of Vader's attacks was overwhelming. Each strike drove him back another step. Each parry cost him more energy than he could afford to spend. "You speak of choices," Vader growled, raining down blow after blow. "What choices did the Council give me? You feared me from the day I arrived. You denied me the rank I had earned. You demanded I betray the only friend who ever truly believed in me. Palpatine was never your friend." Windu ducked under a sweeping strike, and countered with a thrust that Vader barely deflected. He was grooming you, preparing you to become exactly what you are now. Everything he said, every kindness he showed, was designed to turn you into his weapon. At least he listened. The words came with a burst of force energy that sent Windu flying into the wall. He hit hard, his already damaged body screaming in protest. Before he could recover, Vader was on him, lightsaber raised for a killing blow. But the blow never fell. Windu stared up at that mask, his chest heaving, waiting for death. But Vader simply stood there, blade humming inches from his throat, that mechanical breathing the only sound in the sudden silence. "Why do you hesitate?" Windu asked. "Kill me and be done with it." "That's what you do now, isn't it? Kill anyone who threatens the Empire's lies." For a long moment, there was no response. Then, slowly, Vader lowered his blade. "You don't understand," he said. His voice was quieter now, almost reflective. "You never understood. I didn't fall to the dark side because of Palpatine's manipulation. I fell because the Jedi way offered nothing to someone like me. You preached detachment while sending me into wars that traumatized my soul. You demanded I release my attachments while offering nothing to fill the void they left behind. And when I came to you with the one thing that mattered, when I told you Palpatine was the Sith Lord, you pushed me aside like I was nothing." Windu pulled himself upright, keeping his blade ready. "I was trying to protect the Republic. You were trying to protect yourselves. The Jedi cared about their power, their position, their precious counsel. You didn't care about the people you were supposed to serve. You didn't care about me. I cared enough to train you, to watch over you, to advocate for you when other masters wanted to expel you from the Order entirely. And yet when it mattered most, you still didn't trust me." The words hung in the air between them. Windu couldn't deny their truth. He had never fully trusted Anakin, had never believed that the Chosen One could truly bring balance, without also bringing destruction. And that distrust had contributed to everything that followed. But it wasn't the only factor. "You had choices, Anakin." Windu's voice was softer now, but no less intense. "Whatever the Council did or didn't do, you had choices. You could have let me kill Palpatine. You could have walked away from the Empire and found another path. Instead, you became this." He gestured at Vader's armored form. "You became a slave again. Not to a master on Tatooine, but to a master in a throne room. How is what you have now any better than what you left behind?" The mechanical breathing hitched. Vader's lightsaber trembled slightly in his grip. "You know nothing of my life now. I know you've traded one form of bondage for another. I know you spend your days hunting down survivors of an order you once belonged to, killing people who were once your brothers and sisters. I know you're searching for Obi-Wan Kenobi, probably to kill him too. Tell me, Anakin, when you finally find him, will it bring you peace? Will murdering your old master finally fill the void inside you? Do not speak of things you don't understand. Then help me understand." Windu took a step forward, lowering his blade slightly. "Tell me about Padme." The name struck Vader like a physical blow. He staggered back, his breathing becoming rapid and erratic. The force around him churned with sudden, violent emotion, a maelstrom of grief and guilt and rage that made the very air vibrate. "Do not," he snarled, "say that name." "Why not? She was your wife, wasn't she? The secret you kept from everyone. The attachment you couldn't release. She died around the same time the Empire rose. Was that a coincidence, Anakin? Or did something happen that night that you've never told anyone? The mask turned away. The mechanical breathing steadied, but something had shifted in Vader's posture. The aggression was still there, but beneath it was something else. Something that looked almost like anguish. She died because of me. The words came out barely above a whisper. I tried to save her. I did everything Palpatine promised would give me the power to save her. And she died anyway. Palpatine promised you power over death? He promised me power over everything. Vader's voice was hollow, empty. He said the dark side held secrets the Jedi were too afraid to explore. He said I could prevent the people I loved from dying if I just had the courage to embrace my true nature. And I believed him. Windu felt something he hadn't expected. Sympathy. Buried beneath the anger and the trauma of everything Vader had done, there was sympathy for the desperate young man who had been manipulated into destroying his own life. He lied to you. I know that now. The mask turned back toward Windu. I've known it for years, but knowing doesn't change anything. Padmé is still dead, the Jedi are still gone, and I am still this. He gestured at his own armored body. There is no going back from what I've become, no redemption for the things I've done. All that's left is the path forward, serving the Empire, destroying its enemies, and hoping that someday the pain will finally end. Windu studied him for a long moment. The hatred he had carried for years was still there, but it had been complicated by understanding. Anakin Skywalker had not become Darth Vader because he was evil. He had become Vader because he was broken, because the people who should have helped him had failed him, and the one who promised to save him had destroyed him instead. But understanding didn't mean forgiveness. And it didn't mean Windu could let the truth remain hidden. I can't let this stand, Anakin. The galaxy needs to know who you really are. They need to understand that the monster terrorizing them was once the hero they cheered for. Maybe it won't change anything. Maybe the Empire will spin it into more propaganda. But the truth deserves to be spoken, even if no one wants to hear it. Vader's lightsaber reignited. If you broadcast that truth, I will hunt you down. I will kill everyone who helped you, and I will make sure your death is slow and painful. Probably. Windu reignited his own blade. But you won't stop me. Not tonight. The battle resumed with even greater intensity than before. Vader attacked with renewed fury, his blade a crimson blur of destruction. Windu met him technique for technique, channeling everything he had learned in decades of combat. The meditation chamber became a whirlwind of clashing light and thundering impacts as two of the most powerful Force users in the galaxy fought for supremacy. But Windu wasn't trying to win. He was trying to survive, trying to buy enough time for his plan to succeed. Because while they fought, far across the galaxy, Bail Organa's people were implementing the broadcast he had prepared. The evidence he had gathered, the testimony he had recorded, all of it was being transmitted across hundreds of systems. By the time this battle ended, win or lose, the truth about Darth Vader would be spreading like wildfire. The fight took them through the ruined corridors of the temple. Windu used his knowledge of the layout to his advantage, leading Vader through narrow passages where his massive frame was a hindrance, across unstable floors that threatened to collapse under the weight of combat, past reminders of the order he had helped destroy. They passed the council chamber, its circular walls now scarred and broken. They fought through the archives, where the collected wisdom of generations of Jedi had once been stored. They battled in the training cells, where younglings had learned the forms that they hoped would one day make them knights. At every location, Windu spoke. He named the masters who had taught there, the students who had trained there, the traditions that had been ended there. He forced Vader to confront the reality of what his choices had wrought, to see the destruction not as abstract history, but as personal loss. And slowly, inexorably, Vader began to crack. His attacks became more erratic, less controlled. The precision that had characterized his earlier fighting gave way to raw aggression, power without finesse. Windu pressed his advantage, landing strikes that scored the black armor, that damaged the life support systems keeping Vader alive. But Vader was still incredibly powerful. A force push sent Windu crashing through a weakened wall. A telekinetic grip crushed his mechanical hand into useless scrap. And always, that relentless advance, that mechanical breathing, that crimson blade seeking his death. They ended up in a vast chamber that had once been the temple's main hangar. Ships had launched from here, carrying Jedi to every corner of the galaxy. Now it was empty, the ceiling open to the Coruscant sky, artificial light streaming down through the gap. The hangar was enormous, a cathedral of durasteel and transparasteel that had once housed dozens of starfighters and shuttles. Now it was a graveyard. Wrecked ships lay scattered across the floor like the bones of giant beasts, their hulls scored with blaster marks and lightsaber cuts. The bodies of their pilots had long since been removed, but Windu could feel the echoes of their deaths in the Force, lingering traces of fear and confusion and betrayal. This was where many of the Jedi had made their last stand. When the clones turned on them, when Order 66 transformed trusted allies into murderers, some of the knights and masters had fought their way to the hangar, hoping to escape in the ships stored there. They had found the ships sabotaged, the fuel lines cut, the controls destroyed. They had been trapped, surrounded by the soldiers they had led into battle 100 times before, and they had died in a crossfire that left this chamber scarred beyond recognition. Windu could sense their ghosts. Not literally, of course. The Jedi didn't believe in ghosts in the conventional sense, but the Force remembered trauma, recorded it in ways that a sensitive individual could perceive. And this place was saturated with trauma, layer upon layer of suffering, compressed into a single awful moment. Vader felt it too. Windu could tell by the way he paused at the entrance, that masked head turning slowly, as if surveying the damage he had helped cause. Was there guilt beneath that armor? Regret? Or had Anakin Skywalker's capacity for such emotions been burned away along with his body on Mustafar? This is where they died. Windu's voice echoed through the empty hangar. The ones who trusted you. The ones who called you brother. Vader's breathing quickened slightly. Do not speak of things you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You helped murder them. You stood with the clones while they gunned down men and women who would have died for you. And for what? Because Palpatine promised you power. Because you were too afraid to face your destiny without someone holding your hand. The taunt worked. Vader attacked with renewed fury, his lightsaber carving through the air in devastating arcs. Windu barely parried the first strike, stumbled back from the second, and caught the third on his blade with a force that nearly drove him to his knees. But even as he defended, Windu kept talking. Words were weapons too, and against someone as emotionally volatile as Anakin had always been, they could cut deeper than any lightsaber. I remember when you first came to the temple. Windu ducked under a sweeping blow and countered with a thrust that Vader barely deflected. You were so eager to prove yourself, so desperate for approval. We should have seen then what you would become. You know nothing of what I was. I know you were angry." Windu leapt over a low strike and landed on the wing of a wrecked starfighter. "Angry at your mother for leaving you. Angry at the slavers who treated you like property. Angry at the Jedi for not saving her when she died." The mention of Shmi Skywalker had an immediate effect. Vader's attacks became wild, unfocused, his precision abandoned in favor of raw power. He slashed at the starfighter's wing, cutting through durasteel like paper, and Windu had to leap again to avoid being bisected along with the wreckage. You could have saved her. Windu continued his psychological assault, even as he fought for his life. The Council knew she was in danger. We sensed it through the Force, sensed your nightmares about her suffering. But we did nothing. We told you to let go of your attachments and trust in the Force. Stop. We failed you, Anakin. Windu landed on the hangar floor and faced Vader directly. We failed you and your mother and everyone else who ever needed our help. The Jedi way was supposed to prevent suffering, but all we did was create rules that made it worse. You're not the only one who bears responsibility for what happened. The words gave Vader pause. His lightsaber hung motionless in the air, its crimson glow casting bloody shadows across his mask. For a long moment, only the mechanical breathing broke the silence. "Why do you tell me this?" Vader's voice was quieter now, almost confused. "Why admit the Council's failures? Because the truth matters." Windu's grip on his own lightsaber tightened. "Because you need to understand that your fall wasn't inevitable. It was the result of choices, yours and ours, and choices can be unmade. Palpatine wants you to believe you're trapped, that there's no going back from what you've become. But that's just another lie in a lifetime of lies. There is no going back." Vader raised his blade again, but the attack didn't come. "The armor makes sure of that. I can't survive without it, can't breathe without it, can't feel anything except pain and rage without it. Palpatine designed it that way. He wanted to make sure I could never be anything except his weapon." The admission was stunning. Windu had suspected that Vader's armor was more than just life support. But to hear it confirmed, to know that Palpatine had deliberately crippled his own apprentice to ensure his obedience, added a new dimension to the tragedy. "He imprisoned you in your own body. He saved my life." The words came out bitter, ironic. After what happened on Mustafar, I was dying, burns covering my entire body, lungs destroyed by volcanic gases. I begged for death, and instead he gave me this. Mustafar. Windu filed the information away. What happened there? Vader's mask turned away. That is not your concern. It is, if I'm going to help you. The words surprised both of them. Windu hadn't planned to say them. He had come here intending to confront Vader, to gather evidence for his broadcast, perhaps even to kill him if the opportunity arose. But standing here in the ruins of everything they had both lost, facing the broken creature that his former student had become, something shifted. "You can't help me," Vader said. "No one can." "Maybe not." Windu lowered his lightsaber slightly. "But maybe exposing the truth is its own form of help. Maybe knowing that the galaxy sees you clearly, sees what Palpatine made you, will give you something you've been missing." "And what is that?" "A reason to choose differently." Windu's voice was softer now, almost gentle. The Jedi believed that anyone could be redeemed, no matter how far they'd fallen. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. But I believe that choices matter. And as long as you're alive, as long as you're capable of choosing, you're not beyond salvation. The hangar fell silent, except for the mechanical breathing. Vader stood motionless, his lightsaber humming at his side, caught between attack and something that might have been contemplation. Windu could feel the conflict radiating off him. Waves of darkness shot through with something brighter, something that might have been hope or might have been despair. Then Vader raised his blade. Pretty words, but they don't change anything. The galaxy you're threatening to expose me to is the same galaxy that cheered while the Jedi burned. They don't deserve the truth. They deserve the empire they chose. They didn't choose it. Palpatine manipulated them the same way he manipulated you. And when they learn what really happened, when they understand the depth of his deception, we'll never know. Because you're going to die here, and your broadcast will die with you. He attacked. The final phase of their duel was the most brutal yet. Vader had abandoned any pretense of control, throwing himself at Windu with everything he had. The dark side of the Force swirled around him like a hurricane, amplifying his strength, his speed, his reach. Debris flew through the air, propelled by telekinetic fury. The wreckage of starfighters crumpled and twisted as Vader tore them apart to hurl at his opponent. Windu was exhausted. His body screamed with pain from a dozen injuries. His lightsaber felt impossibly heavy in his one remaining hand. He knew he couldn't continue fighting much longer. Either he would find a way to escape, or Vader would finally land the killing blow. But he had one last card to play. "It's done, Anakin." Vader paused, lightsaber raised. The broadcast went out hours ago. By now, millions of beings across the galaxy have heard the truth about who you really are. Clone veterans, senators, ordinary citizens who once cheered for the hero with no fear. They all know that their hero became their oppressor. For a long moment, Vader simply stood there. The mechanical breathing was ragged now, the vocoder struggling to keep up with whatever emotions were churning behind that mask. Then he screamed. It was a sound of pure anguish, of rage and despair, and something that might have been grief. The Force erupted around him, a maelstrom of dark-side energy that shattered what remained of the hangar's walls. Debris flew in every direction, support beams groaning and collapsing, the structure itself coming apart under the weight of Vader's fury. Windu ran. He used every scrap of remaining strength to leap through the chaos, to dodge the flying wreckage, to find a path through the destruction. Behind him, he could hear Vader's screaming fading into the distance, the sound of a man confronting the ruins of everything he had once been. He escaped. Barely. His body was broken, his resources depleted, his future uncertain. But he had accomplished what he set out to do. The truth was free, and nothing would ever be the same. The aftermath played out across the galaxy, like ripples spreading from a stone dropped in still water. On Coruscant itself, the reaction was immediate and polarized. Imperial loyalists dismissed the broadcast as obvious rebel propaganda, pointing out that the evidence could have been fabricated, that witnesses could have been bribed or coerced, that the very existence of Mace Windu proved nothing except that the Jedi were even more devious than anyone had suspected. They held rallies in the Senate district, waving Imperial banners and chanting slogans of support for the Emperor and his enforcer. But beneath the surface, doubt spread like a plague. Private conversations in upper-class cantinas turned to whispered speculation about the broadcast's claims. Business executives who had worked with Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars compared notes on his mannerisms, finding troubling similarities to the reports of Vader's behavior. Military officers who had served under Skywalker's command watched recordings of Vader's movements and saw echoes of their former general in every gesture. The middle levels, home to the billions of ordinary citizens who kept Coruscant functioning, were thrown into chaos. People argued in marketplaces and transit stations, in homes and workplaces, about what the broadcast meant and whether it could be believed. Some clung to the official narrative, preferring the comfortable lie to the disturbing truth. Others embraced the revelation as confirmation of suspicions they had harbored for years. And still others simply didn't know what to believe, caught between trust in authority and the evidence of their own eyes. In the lower levels, where Windu had spent years building his reputation as a protector of the forgotten, the reaction was different. These people had never had reason to trust the Empire or its propaganda. To them, the revelation about Vader was simply another piece of evidence that the system was rotten to its core. They didn't need convincing. They needed weapons. Recruitment for the nascent rebellion surged in the weeks following the broadcast. People who had been afraid to act, who had told themselves that resistance was futile, suddenly found their courage. If the Empire could transform a hero into a monster and hide it from the galaxy for years, what else were they hiding? What other atrocities had been committed in the name of order and security? Across the galaxy, similar patterns played out. Core worlds tended toward denial, their populations too invested in the imperial system to accept evidence of its corruption. Rim worlds tended toward belief, their distance from the center of power making them more skeptical of official narratives. And everywhere, the broadcast sparked conversations that had been suppressed for years, questions that people had been afraid to ask out loud. On Alderaan, Bail Organa watched the chaos unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. The broadcast had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The revelation about Vader had struck at the heart of imperial legitimacy, forcing people to question the narrative they had accepted since the Republic's fall. But success brought its own dangers. The Empire would respond, had to respond, and the response would likely be brutal. He increased security around the royal palace and sent warnings to other rebel cells across the galaxy. The time of cautious resistance was ending. The war for the galaxy's soul was about to begin in earnest. On dozens of other worlds, similar calculations were being made. Resistance leaders who had been operating in isolation began to reach out to each other, recognizing that the moment for coordination had arrived. Supply lines were established. Communication protocols were agreed upon. The foundations of what would become the Rebel Alliance were being laid in the chaos that Windu's revelation had created. The Empire's response came swiftly and predictably. Imperial propaganda went into overdrive. Every news outlet, every holonet channel, every information source that the Empire could influence was flooded with counter-narratives. The broadcast was a rebel fabrication. The witnesses were actors and malcontents. The evidence had been manufactured using sophisticated forgery techniques. And Mace Windu himself, the supposed survivor of the Jedi Purge, was a clone or a doppelganger or a madman who had convinced himself he was someone he wasn't. Public executions of suspected rebel sympathizers increased dramatically. In cities across the galaxy, citizens accused of spreading the broadcast or discussing its contents were dragged from their homes and shot in the streets. The message was clear. Questioning the Empire's narrative was treason, punishable by death. On Coruscant, the ISB launched a massive manhunt for Mace Windu. Every informant in their network was activated. Every surveillance system was repurposed to search for his face, his Force signature, any trace of his presence. The bounty placed on his head was higher than any in Imperial history, enough to make a man wealthy beyond imagination. But Windu had already escaped. The chaos following his broadcast had provided cover for his extraction. a rebel ship slipping through Coruscant's defenses while the Empire's attention was focused elsewhere. By the time the manhunt began in earnest, he was light years away, hidden in a rebel base that existed on no Imperial chart. Palpatine's fury was legendary. Those who witnessed his reaction in the aftermath of the broadcast spoke in hushed whispers of lightning arcing across the throne room, of guards and advisors struck down for imagined failures, of a rage so profound that it seemed to shake the foundations of the Imperial Palace itself. But his public response was measured, calculated to minimize the damage while deflecting blame. In a rare address to the galaxy, the Emperor acknowledged that a disgraced former Jedi had attempted to spread lies about Lord Vader. He expressed sorrow that such a respected master had apparently succumbed to madness during his years in hiding. And he assured the people that the Empire remained strong, that Vader remained loyal, that nothing had changed except the rebels' desperation to undermine the peace and security that Imperial rule had brought. It was a masterful performance. Those already inclined to believe the Empire found reasons to continue believing. Those already inclined to doubt found their doubts strengthened. And those in between were given permission to remain uncertain, to focus on their daily lives rather than questions they couldn't answer. But the damage had been done. The seed of truth had been planted, and no amount of propaganda could entirely uproot it. The rebellion gained strength with every passing month. What had been scattered cells became coordinated networks. What had been amateur resistance became professional military operations. Supplies flowed through channels that the Empire couldn't trace. Intelligence was gathered and shared with an efficiency that matched or exceeded Imperial capabilities. More importantly, the revelation about Vader had given the rebellion something it had lacked before: a narrative. They weren't just fighting against an oppressive government. They were fighting against the corruption of everything the Republic had stood for. The Empire hadn't just seized power. It had perverted the galaxy's greatest heroes, transformed them into instruments of terror, and lied to the people about what it had done. That narrative was powerful. It recruited soldiers who might otherwise have stayed home. It inspired civilians to take risks they would never have considered before. It gave meaning to sacrifice and purpose to struggle. The rebellion was no longer just opposition. It was a crusade. Vader himself became something different after the exposure. The change began immediately after the broadcast spread across the galaxy. In his private chambers aboard the Executor, Vader sat alone in the darkness, the mechanical breathing the only sound, and contemplated what had happened. For years, he had hidden behind the mask, behind the persona of Darth Vader, pretending that Anakin Skywalker was truly dead. That fiction had been comfortable, even necessary. It had allowed him to function, to serve the Empire, to suppress the guilt and grief that would otherwise have consumed him. Now that fiction was shattered. The galaxy knew. Everyone who heard the broadcast, everyone who saw the evidence, knew that the monster terrorizing them had once been their hero. The mask no longer concealed anything. It was just armor now, protection for a body too damaged to survive without it, not protection for an identity that no longer existed. The knowledge changed him in ways he couldn't have anticipated. He found himself thinking about the past more frequently, memories surfacing unbidden at unexpected moments. The face of his mother, dying in his arms on Tatooine. The face of Padme, turning away from him in horror as he revealed what he had become. The faces of the younglings in the temple, their trust and confusion mixing in the moment before his lightsaber took their lives. These memories had always been there, lurking beneath the surface of his consciousness. But before, he had been able to push them aside, to tell himself that they belonged to someone else, a dead man whose choices were no longer relevant. Now he couldn't maintain that separation. Anakin Skywalker was not dead. Anakin Skywalker was alive, trapped inside this armored prison, and the galaxy knew it. Those who served under him noticed the changes, though they were careful never to mention them. Admiral Piet, who had survived longer as Vader's subordinate than any other officer in the fleet, observed his commander with carefully concealed concern. The Dark Lord had always been unpredictable, prone to violent outbursts that left subordinates dead on the deck. But there had been a pattern to that violence, a kind of logic that could be understood and, to some extent, anticipated. Now that pattern had shifted. Vader was still dangerous, still capable of killing anyone who disappointed him. But the triggers had changed. Things that would have provoked instant rage before now produced only cold silence. Things that would have been overlooked before now resulted in brutal punishment. It was as if all the rules had been rewritten overnight, and no one had been given a copy of the new code. More disturbingly, there were moments when Vader seemed almost gentle. Officers who expected execution for failures found themselves merely demoted or transferred. Prisoners who should have been tortured for information were interrogated through conventional means. And on at least one occasion, Piet witnessed Vader standing before a viewport for hours, staring at the stars as if searching for something that wasn't there. These moments of apparent humanity were more frightening than the violence. At least violence was predictable. This new Vader, this creature torn between his nature and something else, was utterly unpredictable. No one knew what to expect from one moment to the next. The Emperor, of course, noticed the changes as well. Palpatine had spent decades studying Vader, understanding his psychology, manipulating his emotions to ensure loyalty and obedience. The exposure of Vader's identity threatened that careful control. If Vader began to question his choices, to regret what he had done, he might become unreliable. Worse, he might become a threat. Their meetings in the throne room became exercises in psychological warfare. Palpatine probed Vader's mind, searching for signs of wavering loyalty, testing his commitment to the dark side. He reminded Vader of the crimes he had committed, the people he had killed, the bridges he had burned. He made clear that there was no going back, no redemption possible, that Vader's only path forward was deeper into the darkness. And Vader, outwardly, submitted. He knelt before his master and reaffirmed his loyalty. He carried out his missions with the same brutal efficiency as before. He gave no outward sign that anything had changed. But inwardly, something was shifting. The truth Windu had exposed was working its way through his consciousness like a slow poison. He couldn't stop thinking about what the galaxy now knew about him. He couldn't stop wondering what his former friends and comrades thought when they learned the truth. He couldn't stop imagining the faces of everyone he had killed, everyone who had trusted Anakin Skywalker before he became Darth Vader. The visits to places from his past became more frequent. He went to the ruined temple, not to hunt survivors, but to remember, to walk through the corridors where he had trained and feel the echoes of what he had destroyed. He went to the apartment complex where he had lived with Padme, standing outside for hours in the hope that he might feel some trace of her presence. He went to Naboo, to the tomb where her body rested, and knelt before it in the darkness while his mechanical lungs wheezed and rattled. What he sought in these visits, he couldn't have explained even to himself. Forgiveness was impossible. The dead could not forgive, and the living would never believe any apology he might offer. Redemption was a fantasy, a lie that the Jedi had taught to make themselves feel better about the darkness in the galaxy. There was no force in the universe that could undo what he had done or heal the wounds he had inflicted. And yet he kept returning, kept searching, kept hoping, against all evidence and reason, that somewhere in the ruins of his past he might find something worth saving. Perhaps that was the cruelest aspect of his punishment. Not the constant pain of his injuries, not the prison of his armor, not even the servitude to a master he despised. The cruelest thing was the persistence of hope, the stubborn refusal of Anakin Skywalker's soul to accept that everything was lost. That hope would prove to be important. Years later, when a young man named Luke Skywalker appeared and declared his belief that there was still good in his father, Vader would remember these moments. He would remember the visits to his past, the searches for meaning, the persistent flicker of something that refused to be extinguished. But that was still years away. For now, there was only the daily struggle to function, to serve, to survive, and the constant grinding knowledge that the galaxy saw him clearly for the first time. Most significantly, he began visiting places connected to his past. The ruins of the Jedi Temple, where he had trained as a boy and slaughtered his brothers as a man. The apartment complex where he had lived during his time as a Jedi Knight, now converted to Imperial housing. The memorial that had been erected for Padme Amidala on Naboo, where he stood for hours staring at the face of the woman he had loved and lost. He was more volatile, more prone to violent outbursts, more likely to execute subordinates for minor failures. The carefully controlled menace that had always characterized his command gave way to something rawer, more unpredictable. But there were other changes too, subtler ones that only the most observant would notice. He spent more time alone. The meditation chambers where he could remove his mask and breathe unfiltered air saw more use than ever before. Guards reported hearing strange sounds from within, sounds that might have been screaming, or might have been weeping, or might have been something that no human voice should produce. His hunting of Jedi survivors, once pursued with single-minded intensity, became sporadic. Weeks would pass without any operations targeting suspected Force sensitives, then sudden bursts of activity that seemed almost frantic, desperate. He was still hunting, but something had changed in the nature of the hunt. Most significantly, he began visiting places connected to his past. The ruins of the Jedi Temple, where he had trained as a boy and slaughtered his brothers as a man. The apartment complex where he had lived during his time as a Jedi Knight, now converted to Imperial housing. The memorial that had been erected for Padme Amidala on Naboo, where he stood for hours staring at the face of the woman he had loved and lost. These visits were conducted in secret, without the knowledge of the Emperor or the Imperial command structure. Vader used all his skills to move undetected, to observe without being observed, to confront his past in solitude. What he thought during these visits, what he felt, no one could say. But the very fact that he made them suggested that something was stirring beneath the armor. Perhaps the truth Windu had exposed was working its way into his consciousness. Perhaps being known, being seen clearly for what he had become, had shaken loose something that years of denial had kept buried. Or perhaps it was simply that the passage of time had worn down the walls he had built around his memories, allowing fragments of Anakin Skywalker to surface in the mind of Darth Vader. Whatever the reason, the monster was changing. And change, in someone so powerful and so damaged, could lead anywhere. In his hidden base, Mace Windu recovered from his injuries and took stock of what he had accomplished. The physical wounds were the least of his concerns. Rebel medics, many of them trained in Republic military hospitals before defecting to the Resistance, patched him up with characteristic efficiency. The broken bones were set. The burned tissue was treated. The damage to his mechanical hand, which had been destroyed in the fight with Vader, was replaced with a newer, better prosthetic, salvaged from an Imperial shipment. The psychological wounds were harder to address. Windu had spent years imagining his confrontation with Vader. In his mind, it had always ended one of two ways. Either he killed the monster his former student had become, or the monster killed him. The actual outcome, a brutal draw followed by escape and revelation, had never occurred to him as a possibility. Now he had to live with the consequences of choices he had made in the heat of battle. The words he had spoken to Vader, the truths he had exposed about the Council's failures, the offer of help that had surprised them both, all of it replayed in his mind during the long hours of recovery. Had he done the right thing? Would his actions ultimately serve the cause of justice? Or had he simply made a complicated situation worse? He didn't know. He couldn't know. The future was always in motion, and the Force offered no guarantees about outcomes. All he could do was continue forward, making the best choices he could with the information he had, and trust that the cumulative effect would be positive. The rebellion gave him purpose during those uncertain days. They needed his expertise, his knowledge of Jedi techniques and Imperial psychology, his understanding of the way power functioned at the highest levels. He became an advisor to their military council, a trainer of their Force-sensitive recruits, a strategic analyst whose insights shaped operations across dozens of worlds. He also continued gathering information about Vader. The broadcast had exposed the basic truth of Vader's identity, but there was more to learn. Details about his capabilities and limitations, patterns in his behavior that could be exploited, weaknesses in his armor, both physical and psychological, that might prove useful in future confrontations. Slowly, a more complete picture emerged. Vader was powerful, perhaps the most powerful Force user in the galaxy, now that the Jedi were gone. But he was also damaged, crippled by the injuries that had necessitated his armor, and trapped in a suit designed more to control than to heal. He could not survive without constant life support. He could not move freely in environments that threatened his systems. He could not feel the full range of sensations that a healthy body provided. And he was not entirely committed to the Empire. The visits to his past, the emotional volatility, the occasional moments of mercy that defied explanation, all of it suggested that Anakin Skywalker was not entirely dead. There was conflict within him, a war between the man he had been and the monster he had become. That conflict was a vulnerability, perhaps the only vulnerability that mattered. Windu began to consider strategies that went beyond simple military opposition. The rebellion could fight the Empire forever, winning battles and losing others, grinding away at Imperial resources without ever achieving final victory. But if Vader could be turned, if the Chosen One could be brought back to the light, the calculus would change dramatically. It was a long shot, perhaps impossible. But impossible things had happened before, and the galaxy desperately needed hope. Years passed. The rebellion grew stronger. The Empire responded with increasing brutality. Battles were fought on 100 worlds, victories and defeats accumulating in a ledger that neither side could read with certainty. The conflict that would come to be known as the Galactic Civil War was well and truly underway. Through it all, the truth about Vader continued to spread. Imperial propaganda could slow its propagation, but not stop it. Each new generation learned the story of Anakin Skywalker's fall, of the hero who became a monster, of the chosen one who chose wrong. The revelation that Mace Windu had risked everything to expose became part of the rebellion's mythology, a symbol of the power of truth against tyranny. Windu himself became something of a legend. The survivors of the Jedi Purge who had managed to stay hidden began to seek him out, drawn by rumors of a master who had escaped the Empire's grasp and was now fighting back. He trained them as best he could, teaching them the hybrid philosophy he had developed during his years in the lower levels, preparing them for a war that would likely outlast them all. He never faced Vader again. The opportunities arose occasionally, operations that would have brought them into contact, but circumstances always intervened. Sometimes Windu was needed elsewhere. Sometimes Vader was called away by the Emperor's commands. And sometimes, in his most honest moments, Windu deliberately avoided the confrontation. Not out of fear, though he certainly respected Vader's power, but because he had begun to believe that killing Vader wasn't the answer. The galaxy didn't need another death. It needed redemption. It needed proof that even the darkest fall could be reversed, that even the worst choices could be overcome. Whether such redemption was possible, Windu couldn't say. But he believed it was worth hoping for, worth working toward, worth keeping the door open, even a crack, for the day when Anakin Skywalker might finally find his way back to the light. Imperial propaganda went into overdrive, denouncing the broadcast as rebel lies and fabricated evidence. But the denials rang hollow to anyone who bothered to examine the evidence. The recordings of Vader's fighting style, compared side by side with archived footage of Anakin Skywalker, were too similar to dismiss. The testimonies from clone veterans who recognized their former general's mannerisms, his speech patterns, even his favorite tactical approaches, carried the weight of personal experience. And the existence of Mace Windu himself, a Jedi Master who had been reported dead for years, proved that the Empire's official narrative couldn't be trusted. Doubt spread through the ranks of the Imperial military. Officers who had served in the Clone Wars remembered fighting alongside Anakin Skywalker, remembered admiring his courage and tactical brilliance. Now they had to reconcile those memories with the reality of Darth Vader, the Emperor's monster who killed without mercy and ruled through fear. Some managed to compartmentalize, to tell themselves that Skywalker and Vader were truly different people, regardless of what the evidence suggested. But others couldn't. Others began to question everything they had been told about the Empire and its origins. The effect on ordinary citizens was even more profound. Anakin Skywalker had been a propaganda hero during the Clone Wars, his face plastered on recruitment posters and his victories celebrated in the media. Millions of beings across the galaxy had grown up admiring him, aspiring to be like him, believing that the republic he fought for represented everything good and noble in the universe. Learning that their hero had become the Empire's enforcer, that he had murdered children and hunted down his former comrades, shattered something in the collective consciousness. The rebellion gained new recruits at an unprecedented rate. People who had previously been content to keep their heads down and survive suddenly found themselves unable to tolerate their complicity in the Empire's crimes. If Anakin Skywalker could fall so completely, could betray everything he once stood for, then the Empire's corruption was even worse than anyone had imagined. The only moral response was resistance. Palpatine was furious. The revelation about Vader had been carefully guarded for years, a secret known only to the Emperor himself and a handful of trusted advisors. Its exposure represented not just a propaganda disaster, but a fundamental breach in the web of lies that supported his rule. He summoned Vader to his throne room for a conversation that, according to later reports, left the Dark Lord limping and even more damaged than before. But he didn't kill Vader, perhaps because he still needed the power his apprentice provided, perhaps because destroying Vader would only confirm the truth of the broadcast, or perhaps because, in his own twisted way, Palpatine enjoyed watching his creation suffer. Vader himself became something different after the revelation. More brutal, if that was possible. More isolated. The few subordinates who had served him loyally found themselves pushed away, replaced by a rotating cast of officers who rarely survived long enough to learn his preferences. He threw himself into his duties with a fervor that bordered on suicidal, seeking out the most dangerous missions, confronting the strongest enemies, as if hoping that someone or something would finally manage to kill him. But there were other changes too, subtle ones that only someone watching closely would notice. He stopped hunting Jedi survivors with quite the same intensity. Oh, he still killed any he encountered, still responded to reports of Force-sensitive activity with lethal efficiency. But the active searching, the personal investigations that had once consumed much of his time, gradually diminished. It was as if some part of him no longer wanted to destroy the last remnants of what he had once been. And sometimes, in moments when he thought no one was watching, Vader would pause before the bodies of his victims, just for a second, just long enough for something that might have been regret to flicker across that expressionless mask. Then he would move on, the mechanical breathing steady and cold, and the moment would pass as if it had never happened. Mace Windu watched all of this from a distance. He had escaped Coruscant in the chaos following his confrontation with Vader, making his way to a hidden rebel base where Bail Organa's people provided medical treatment and sanctuary. His injuries were severe, worse than what he had suffered in his original fall, and there were times during his recovery when the medical droids gave him less than even odds of survival. But Windu was stubborn. He had always been stubborn, and he refused to die until he had seen his work through to its conclusion. As his body healed, he began to take on a new role within the rebellion. Not as a warrior, not anymore. His fighting days were largely behind him, his body too damaged to serve on the front lines. But as a teacher, a strategist, a keeper of knowledge that would otherwise have been lost with the destruction of the Jedi Order. He trained new Force sensitives in a style that blended the best of the Jedi tradition with the lessons he had learned through his years of survival. He taught them to embrace their emotions rather than suppress them, to use their attachments as sources of strength rather than weakness, to balance the light and dark sides of the Force rather than denying either one existed. It was a philosophy that would have horrified the Old Council. But the Old Council was dead, and their way had proven insufficient to the challenges of the age. He also served as an advisor to the rebellion's military leadership, providing tactical insights drawn from decades of warfare. His knowledge of Imperial psychology, of the way Vader and Palpatine thought and operated, proved invaluable in planning operations that exploited the Empire's weaknesses. But perhaps his most important contribution was simply existing, being visible, letting the galaxy see that the Jedi had not been completely destroyed, that at least one master had survived to carry on the tradition. His very presence, was a symbol of resistance, proof that Palpatine's victory had not been as complete as he claimed. Years passed. The rebellion grew from a scattered collection of cells into a genuine military force. Battles were fought, some won and some lost, but always with the knowledge that they were fighting for something worth dying for. And throughout it all, the truth about Darth Vader continued to spread, a slow poison eating at the foundations of the Empire's legitimacy. Windu never faced Vader again. He came close several times, operations that brought him within striking distance of the Dark Lord, but always circumstances intervened. Sometimes he was pulled away by other priorities. Sometimes Vader was called elsewhere by the Emperor's commands. And sometimes, Windu admitted to himself in his most honest moments, he deliberately avoided the confrontation. Not out of fear, though he certainly feared what Vader had become, but because he had begun to believe that killing Vader wasn't the answer. The galaxy didn't need Anakin Skywalker dead. It needed him redeemed. It needed proof that even the darkest fall could be reversed, that even the worst choices could be overcome. Whether that redemption was possible, Windu couldn't say. But he had come to believe that it was worth hoping for, worth working toward, worth keeping the door open, even a crack, for the day when Anakin Skywalker might finally find his way back to the light. That day came, eventually, though Windu wouldn't live to see it. The years between the broadcast and Windu's death were some of the most productive of his life, even accounting for the decades he had spent as a Jedi Master. Free from the constraints of the Council, unburdened by the political considerations that had hampered Jedi action during the Republic era, he was able to focus entirely on what mattered, preparing the next generation to carry on the fight. His students were a diverse group. Some were refugees from the Jedi Purge, younglings who had been smuggled to safety before Order 66 and had spent years in hiding. Others were new Force sensitives discovered by the rebellion's growing network, individuals who might have become Jedi in a different era, but now had to forge their own path. And a few were former Inquisitors, agents Vader had trained to hunt Jedi survivors, who had eventually turned against the Empire they served. To all of them, Windu taught the same lessons. The Force was neither light nor dark, good nor evil, but a reflection of the intentions of those who wielded it. Emotions were not enemies to be suppressed, but tools to be understood and channeled. Attachment was not weakness but strength, provided it was balanced with awareness of its dangers. And most importantly, the Jedi way, while containing much wisdom, had proven inadequate to the challenges of their age. A new philosophy was needed, one that incorporated the best of the old tradition while learning from its failures. He called this new approach the Way of the Grey, though his students often joked that he should have named it the Way of the Purple, after the color of his lightsaber blade. The philosophy was controversial among the more traditionally minded survivors of the Purge, who saw any deviation from Jedi orthodoxy as dangerous flirtation with the dark side. But Windu's results spoke for themselves. His students were well-adjusted, emotionally healthy individuals who used their powers effectively without succumbing to corruption. More practically, they were also excellent fighters. Windu's combat training drew on his decades of experience, his mastery of multiple lightsaber forms, and his understanding of how the Force could be applied in battle. His students learned to face opponents of all kinds, from common criminals to trained soldiers, to Force-sensitive enemies like the Inquisitors. They learned when to fight and when to retreat, how to gather intelligence, and how to act on it. The difference between righteous violence and mere brutality. Several of his students went on to become legends in their own right. Ahsoka Tano, who had left the Jedi Order before its fall, but returned to fight against the Empire, trained with Windu for several months, and credited his teachings with helping her integrate the lessons of her unusual journey. Kanan Jarrus, another survivor of Order 66, learned from Windu how to pass on what he knew to his own Padawan, Ezra Bridger. And countless others, names less famous but no less important, carried Windu's teachings into the far corners of the galaxy. Beyond training, Windu served as a strategic advisor to the rebellion's military leadership. His knowledge of Imperial psychology, refined through years of observing Vader and other Imperial commanders, proved invaluable in planning operations. He identified weaknesses in Imperial doctrine that less experienced strategists missed. He predicted enemy responses with uncanny accuracy. And he helped shape the rebellion's overall approach to the war, shifting it from desperate resistance to systematic insurgency. He also continued his intelligence work. The network of informants and allies he had built in Coruscant's lower levels expanded to include contacts across the galaxy. He knew things about Imperial operations that even the Emperor's closest advisors didn't know, because he had access to sources they would never think to cultivate. This intelligence saved countless lives and enabled victories that would otherwise have been impossible. But perhaps his most important contribution was simply being visible. The survival of a Jedi Master, one who had sat on the Council itself, proved that Palpatine's victory had not been complete. Every time Windu appeared in a rebel broadcast or participated in a public operation, he reminded the galaxy that the Jedi had not been entirely extinguished, that the Empire's narrative about Jedi treachery could be challenged, that there were still people willing to fight for what was right, no matter how hopeless the odds seemed. The Empire, of course, did everything in its power to kill him. Bounty hunters were dispatched. Assassin droids were deployed. Entire task forces were dedicated to his capture or elimination. But Windu was a master of survival. He had spent years evading detection in the depths of Coruscant, and those skills translated perfectly to evading Imperial hunters across the galaxy. Several times, he came close to death. An ambush on Lothal nearly succeeded when a local informant turned out to be an Imperial plant. A raid on a rebel base forced him to fight through dozens of stormtroopers with injuries that would have killed a lesser man. And a confrontation with one of Vader's inquisitors, the fifth brother, ended only when rebel reinforcements arrived to extract him from an impossible situation. But each time, he survived. Each time, he returned to his work with renewed determination. And each time, his legend grew, inspiring others to believe that resistance was possible. The truth about Vader continued to spread throughout this period, carried by rebel communications and passed from mouth to mouth across countless worlds. Imperial propaganda tried to suppress it, but propaganda works best when there's no competing narrative. The story of Anakin Skywalker's fall was too compelling, too emotionally resonant to be entirely silenced. People wanted to believe it was true, because believing it helped them make sense of the Empire's cruelty. Over time, the story became part of the rebellion's mythology. New recruits were told how the hero with no fear had been seduced by the Emperor's lies, how the Jedi had been betrayed from within, how the Republic's fall had been engineered rather than earned. The story served as both warning and inspiration. A warning about the dangers of power and manipulation, an inspiration about the importance of remaining true to one's values, even under pressure. Vader, for his part, seemed to take the exposure as a kind of liberation. Not freedom from the Empire, He was still bound by his physical dependence and his psychological conditioning, but freedom from pretense. He no longer bothered hiding his identity from those who served under him. He acknowledged references to his past with cold acknowledgement rather than angry denial. He even, on rare occasions, showed traces of the man he had once been, moments of mercy or hesitation that confused those who expected only cruelty. These moments became more frequent as the years passed, not enough to suggest redemption was imminent, but enough to indicate that the conversation in the ruined temple had planted seeds that were slowly taking root. Vader was thinking about who he had been and what he had become. He was questioning the choices that had led him to this point. He was, in his own twisted way, beginning to heal. None of this made him less dangerous. If anything, a Vader who was aware of his own tragedy was more terrifying than a Vader lost in denial. But it did suggest that the final chapter of his story had not yet been written, that somewhere down the line, an opportunity for redemption might present itself. Windu watched these developments with a mixture of hope and skepticism. He wanted to believe that Anakin could be saved, that the Chosen One could fulfill his destiny of bringing balance rather than destruction. But he had seen too much of what Vader had done to indulge in naive optimism. Whatever happened to Vader in the end would be determined by choices yet to be made, and Windu would not live to see those choices play out. He knew he was dying. His body had been pushed beyond its limits too many times, damaged too severely by too many injuries. The Force could sustain life, but not indefinitely, and Windu felt his reserves diminishing with each passing month. He had perhaps a year left, perhaps less, before his body simply gave out. Rather than fight this fate, he accepted it. He had lived longer than any Jedi Master had a right to expect in this era. He had accomplished things he had never dreamed possible, and he had set in motion events that would continue long after he was gone. His final months were spent ensuring that his students were ready to carry on without him. He passed on the last of his knowledge, shared the secrets he had kept, even from his closest allies, made sure that nothing essential would be lost with his death. He wrote extensively about his philosophy and experiences, creating a record that future generations could study. And he said his goodbyes to everyone who had mattered to him, expressing gratitude for their companionship and confidence in their ability to succeed. The end came quietly. He had always expected to die in battle, to fall with a lightsaber in his hand, facing some overwhelming enemy. Instead, he simply lay down one evening and didn't wake up. His heart, weakened by years of strain and injury, finally stopped beating. The Force welcomed him home. The rebellion mourned his passing, though they couldn't announce it publicly for fear of giving the Empire a propaganda victory. His students gathered in secret to perform the traditional Jedi funeral rites, modified according to the philosophy he had taught them. His ashes were scattered across a dozen worlds that had been significant in his life, including Coruscant, where some of them filtered down through the layers to the very depths where he had spent so many years hiding. But his legacy endured. The truth he had exposed continued to spread, to undermine the Empire's propaganda, to inspire those who had lost hope. And somewhere, inside the armored prison of Darth Vader's body, Anakin Skywalker heard that truth every day. It whispered to him in the silence between breaths. It accused him in the faces of everyone he killed. It reminded him of who he had once been and what he had lost. The years continued to pass. The rebellion grew stronger, evolving from scattered resistance into the Rebel Alliance. Major victories were won, including the destruction of the Death Star at Yavin and the successful evacuation of Hoth. The Empire remained powerful, but its grip on the galaxy was weakening. More and more systems threw off Imperial control. More and more people believed that victory was possible. And then, everything changed. Luke Skywalker appeared. The son that Anakin never knew he had, hidden from the Empire since birth, suddenly emerged as a new hope for the galaxy. Strong in the Force, idealistic to a fault, and utterly convinced that his father could be redeemed, Luke represented something that no one had expected: a second chance. Windu had known about Luke's existence, of course. Bail Organa had shared that secret with him years ago, explaining how Obi-Wan Kenobi had hidden the infant on Tatooine after Padme's death. Windu had even argued about what to do with the boy, whether to train him in the Force or leave him ignorant of his heritage for his own protection. In the end, they had decided to wait, to let Luke grow up in peace until the time was right to reveal his destiny. That time had finally come, and Luke, with all the stubborn idealism of his father at the same age, was determined to confront Vader directly. Not to kill him, but to save him. To reach past the armor and the darkness and find whatever remained of Anakin Skywalker's soul. It was, Windu would have admitted, exactly the kind of foolish, reckless, probably doomed mission that Anakin himself would have undertaken. The apple had not fallen far from the tree. When Luke stood before Vader and the Emperor on the second Death Star, declaring his belief that there was still good in his father, that belief didn't come from nowhere. It had been planted by Mace Windu's broadcast, nurtured by years of doubt and guilt, watered by the blood of everyone who had died fighting for the truth. The galaxy held its breath, and Anakin Skywalker made a choice. Not the choice he had made in Palpatine's office all those years ago, when he had saved a Sith Lord and doomed the Jedi. This time, he chose differently. He chose his son over his master. He chose love over power. He chose redemption over damnation. When he seized the Emperor and hurled him into the reactor shaft, destroying the monster who had manipulated him for decades, Anakin Skywalker fulfilled the prophecy at last. He brought balance to the Force, not by destroying the Jedi as Palpatine had intended, but by destroying the Sith who had corrupted him. The Chosen One's destiny was finally complete. In the Force, Mace Windu felt it happen. United with all the Jedi who had come before, he sensed the moment when Anakin Skywalker finally returned to the light. He felt the balance restored, the wound in the Force beginning to heal, the darkness that had dominated the galaxy for a generation finally receding. The moment was everything the Jedi had believed in and everything they had feared. The Chosen One had fulfilled his destiny, but not in the way anyone had expected. He had brought balance not by destroying the Sith from the outside, but by destroying them from within. He had given his own life to save his son, and in doing so, had proven that even the darkest fall could be reversed. Windu understood, in that moment of cosmic awareness, that his own role in this drama had been essential. The truth he had exposed, the seeds of doubt he had planted, the conversation in the ruined temple that had forced Vader to confront what he had become, all of it had contributed to this outcome. Without that foundation, Luke's appeal might have fallen on deaf ears. The father might never have recognized the son, but Windu also understood that his role had been only part of the story. The final choice, the moment of redemption, had belonged to Anakin alone. No amount of external pressure could have forced that choice. It had to come from within, from whatever spark of goodness had survived the years of darkness and servitude. That was the great truth that Windu's experience had taught him. People cannot be saved against their will. All anyone can do is speak the truth, create the conditions for change, and hope that those who need to hear will listen. The rest is up to them. And Anakin had listened. In the end, when it mattered most, he had heard the truth about who he was and what he could still become. He had made a choice that redeemed not just himself, but the prophecy that had defined his life. The Chosen One had brought balance at last. And perhaps Windu smiled wherever he was, knowing that the truth he had fought to expose had played its part in saving the galaxy. The broadcast had mattered, not because it had directly caused Anakin's redemption, that was Luke's doing, but because it had kept the possibility of redemption alive. It had forced Vader to confront what he had become. It had planted seeds of doubt that had grown over years into something resembling conscience. Without that foundation, Luke's appeal might have fallen on deaf ears. The father might never have recognized the son. But the truth had been spoken, and in the end, the truth had set them both free. The Empire fell, as all empires eventually do. The Rebel Alliance became the New Republic, inheriting the daunting task of rebuilding a galaxy that had been torn apart by decades of war and tyranny. The challenges were immense, and the road to recovery would be long and difficult. But they had hope now. Real hope, based on real victory. The Emperor was dead. The Chosen One had been redeemed. And the truth about what had happened, all of it, the fall and the corruption and the eventual salvation, was known to everyone who cared to learn it. Mace Windu's name was honored in the histories of this new era. He was remembered as one of the great Jedi Masters of the Old Order, a hero of the Clone Wars, and a founder of the resistance that eventually overthrew the Empire. His teachings influenced the new Force traditions that emerged after the fall, traditions that sought to avoid the mistakes of the old Jedi while preserving their wisdom. Most importantly, he was remembered as the one who told the truth when truth was most dangerous, who exposed the lie at the heart of the Empire when doing so could have cost him everything, who believed that the galaxy deserved to know what had been done to it, even if that knowledge brought pain, because that's what the truth does. It doesn't just reveal the darkness, it makes space for the light to return. And in the end, even for someone who had fallen as far as Anakin Skywalker, that light was enough. He died peacefully years later, in his quarters at a hidden rebel base. His body simply gave out, the accumulated damage of a lifetime of warfare finally catching up with him. The Force had kept him alive long past what should have been possible, but even the Force had limits. His last words were to a young Force-sensitive he had been training, a promising student who reminded him in some ways of Anakin Skywalker, but lacked the darkness that had ultimately consumed the Chosen One. "Remember," Windu whispered, his voice barely audible, "the truth is always worth speaking, even when no one wants to hear it, even when it cost you everything. The truth sets people free." Then he closed his eyes and let go. The Force welcomed him home, but his legacy endured. The truth he had exposed continued to spread, to undermine the Empire's propaganda, to inspire those who had lost hope. And somewhere, inside the armored prison of Darth Vader's body, Anakin Skywalker heard that truth every day. It whispered to him in the silence between breaths. It accused him in the faces of everyone he killed. It reminded him of who he had once been and what he had lost. Years later, when a young man named Luke Skywalker stood before Vader and declared his belief that there was still good in his father, that belief didn't come from nowhere. It had been planted by Mace Windu's broadcast, nurtured by years of doubt and guilt, watered by the blood of everyone who had died fighting for the truth. When Anakin Skywalker finally destroyed the Emperor and saved his son's life, fulfilling the prophecy that had defined his existence from childhood, he did so not despite the truth about his past, but because of it. The exposure had forced him to confront what he had become, to acknowledge the horror of his choices, to keep alive some spark of the man he had once been. Without that confrontation, he might have been too far gone to save. Without that truth, there might have been nothing left of Anakin Skywalker to answer his son's desperate faith. Mace Windu never knew how his actions ultimately contributed to the Empire's fall. He died believing that his work had been important but incomplete, that the war would continue long after he was gone. He never saw Anakin's redemption, never witnessed the Empire crumble, never celebrated with the rebellion when their long struggle finally ended in victory. But perhaps, in the Force, he felt it. Perhaps, united with all the Jedi who had come before, he sensed the moment when Anakin Skywalker finally returned to the light. Perhaps he smiled, wherever he was, knowing that the truth he had fought to expose had played its part in saving the galaxy. Because that's what the truth does. It doesn't just reveal the darkness, it makes space for the light to return. And in the end, even for someone who had fallen as far as Anakin Skywalker, that light was enough. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.